Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Smudcast, and today we're doing another Jessie Gender. It's just a wonderful, wonderful YouTuber we just can't get enough of, and her love of Star Trek knows no bounds. It pours itself to even JJ Trek, which is amazing. Is it called JJ Trek or New Trek? I can't. Was that the TV versions? I can't recall.
JJ, it's like you often now it used to be referred to as JJ Trek, but then after it kind of moved into shows like Discovery and Picard, it started being called things like New Trek,
Right?
and NU rather than Star Trek.
Right. So it's kind of like they like the style of J.J. Abrams' movie, how they're all glitzy and explosions and action. They say, hey, we can do that on the small screen. And they did that. And they just ruined the rest of Star Trek in the process. And Jessie seems to enjoy everything to do with that, which is interesting because I think you just put Star Trek on the label and it becomes awesome in some people's minds. And everyone else who has watched Star Trek for, I don't know, 20, 30 years, even more, go, this is not what I expected it to look like these days, or to feel like, at least. And that's not to say the movies were perfect. There's lots of really bad Star Trek movies, or really weird Star Trek movies. But they always have that...
We don't talk about Star Trek 5.
I know, but they always have these idea of trying to be a science fiction story, which is not always clear and doesn't always follow a through plot line. It's always kind of, what's this weird alien thing? Let it be its own weird alien thing. There's lots of sci-fi stories like that where they just sort of, it's now just going and teleporting away. Like, okay. And that's that. That's usually what happens in some of these stories where science fiction is letting it do its thing. It's kind of like a day in the life of an alien god who wants to plant flowers in a distant world in the future or something weird. So there's all sorts of weird stories like that. And the movies, at least the original movies for Star Trek, were kind of like that with, whales coming to Earth to communicate to an alien probe for something.
That was a pretty good one. It was very high concept, but it worked out very, very well.
That was surprising. Yeah, they took a really weird idea, going back in time, which is insane. And the method they go back in time is also insane. To get whales to bring them back to the future to possibly do something they don't know what. It's just what?
Whales, I want to point out, which are much bigger than the bird of prey itself.
It's like I don't know. It's like all the writers did all the wrong things, but they did so well that they broke all the rules, but they broke them all for good reasons because it actually ended up working quite well.
Well, it's a Star Trek film about solving a problem, not fighting an enemy as much.
It was
so why you can't? Did they explain like just can't shoot down the thing which is terrorizing Earth?
Everything was in service of doing what they needed to do, which was get the whales. And so they had to invent ways to do that, how to get nuclear energy, how to do all these weird things to solve a problem, which was great. And I like that plot-centric focus because everyone's involved. We know what's going on. All the characters have a role. It works out so well. And they had fun with the 70s and 80s. I think, was it the 80s they took place in? They go back in time. I can't recall the exact date. So these films are hit and miss. Sometimes they're great, even though they're weird, but they're always sci-fi or science fiction-y, at least.
I would say that at least when it comes to Star Trek, as much... So when I look at... I like to use the examples of Voyager and Enterprise and Star Trek 5 and all the other like poorly written Star Trek stuff. I look at it and I watch some really poorly written media in Star Trek, and it used to be poorly written, but it also used to have sort of like the heart of Star Trek, which was the optimistic future. It understood the kind of world that it was based in, and it felt like it belonged in that world, even though it was poorly written, even though it had writing flaws. But when it comes to New Trek, it seems to it's had the heart removed, so it's no longer that optimistic future. It's all bleak, it's all horrible, and it's just poorly written on top of that with a complete misunderstanding of what Star Trek is supposed to be.
It's tough when you make a movie using the brand of something, trying to, like, you're talking about a TV show, which is a very specific format, and then trying to blow that up into an hour and a half with a bigger budget, with all these different things you can do, a lot more time to shoot scenes and get actors ready. It's a hard thing to do. So interpreting that is always part of the job. So we expect a little bit of difference even from the books. I mean, the books came as a result of the show, and those are not exactly great writing. There are some great authors that do jump into the Star Trek franchise. So it's not...
William Shatner's not one of them.
His writing was in Tech War. That was yeah, that actually made it into a Canadian TV show. So yeah, he did have he had some skills. They weren't great skills, but they were skills.
He wrote a lot of Star Trek books, a lot of them. One of them where the Borg, it was the Romulans that bring back Kirk from the dead by using Borg technology. Ooh, and it was very bizarre. It's very obvious that it's written in service to himself.
Yeah, that's called the Shatnerverse. There's sort of their own flavor in the world of Star Trek novels or novellas, if you want to call them that. But I would not recommend reading Star Trek as a basis for appreciating science fiction. It's such an acute form, and it's so strange. And if you know anything about fan fiction, a lot of it comes from Star Trek. So probably not the best place to start, even though it might feel familiar. You want to go back to the 70s and 80s, where there's all kinds of, even before that, maybe the 60s, where there's all sorts of great authors, short stories, even if you want to go Jules Verne back in the day. Fantastic stuff. So, but hey, maybe you like Star Trek, maybe you want to try it out. I'm not going to say don't go read them. They're just not going to be the cream of the crop when it comes to science fiction. So that's why when we look at someone like who loves 2009's Star Trek, it's like, oh, okay. I mean, it's not a horrible movie. It's definitely not a great movie, but it's an entertaining movie. So we can appreciate that together at least. Okay, let's get going.
I'm going to forewarn everyone here, yes, I know I'm wearing red. It's not the blue uniform. It's weirding me out too. We're all going to get through this together.
Why? Because she loves the science?
Isn't that like the second time she's used that joke? Because she's also did the same with the Lower Decks episode where she's like, yeah, I'm not in blue, I know.
Hot damn. That was the world's first look at Star Trek, the 2009 film directed by one J.J.
Does
Abrams.
that title even look like it belongs in Star Trek? Because it's just got like a big blown up and it's like really flashy.
What did she just do? Did she invert the colors?
Yeah, that looks like an inverted colors.
It's love the science. You gotta love the science.
Okay.
Like Tendi. Gotta be like Tendi. Everyone has to be like Tendi. Gotta love the science.
Destroyer of all franchises.
Released as a teaser trailer before 2000.
Wait, was he destroyer of all franchises? He might have been. Abrams. He's pretty good at it. He's pretty good. He's like this franchise assassin. And also, along with his partner Ryan Johnson, or his rival Ryan Johnson, to say that. It's like a Thanos and Darkseid kind of fought against each other.
J.J. Abrams kind of set up Star Wars, at least the sequels, to fuck up very poorly. Created a very poor foundation, riddled with termites, that was very poor structure, that only just looked nice on the outside, and then people kind of blamed Ryan Johnson for destroying the house, when in fact J.J. already did quite a lot of it himself. And then when it came to Star Trek, yeah, he thoroughly fucked Star Trek, and then he got Bad Robot in charge of the TV shows. He's the reason why Alex Kurtzman is where he is at the moment in Star Trek, because Alex Kurtzman worked under JJ.
Here's Adam Wooford. Start with Arthur C. Clarke of all of his books. I would say that's a pretty safe bet. Yeah, there's lots of great options there. Whether you go to the magazines or his actual publications, they're pretty good. So it depends on your style of reading. There's all sorts of great periodicals and weird little things back in the day with magazines or fanzines, whatever you want to call them, that were just before they were getting popular, because science fiction wasn't a thing then. It was like we were trying to make it big. Harlan Ellison was trying to do that in the 60s and 70s because it wasn't out there yet. No one was buying it. No one was reading it. So he's trying to prove that science fiction can be up there with all the other drama stories and romances and what have you. So yeah, Arthur Clarke is great.
2008's Cloverfield, which was also produced by Abrams. I personally remember going to the theater at least 4 times just to see this teaser. And don't get me wrong.
Going to
Cloverfield
the
is a great
theater
movie.
4 times to see a teaser?
That's strange. That's very strange.
What the fuck?
I can understand watching a
what,
film 4 times.
She didn't go to watch a film. She paid for a film to watch a teaser?
And it's not a Star Trek film. It was just a film because that week or that month was showing trailers and happened to be the Star Trek trailer. There's a thing called YouTube. I think it was there in 2008.
There's this thing called the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely there in 2008 and 2009.
You don't have to pay money and walk out of your house to go watch a trailer 4 times. You could do it in the comfort of your own home.
I really love it, but this teaser, with its use of important moments from actual history of space travel to Leonard Nimoy's haunting delivery of the Trek famous monologue, it so perfectly captured the awe, inspiration, and grandeur of the Star Trek franchise that even today, when I watch this trailer, I get chills every
It's dark
single
and
time.
bleak and horrible.
thinking
Look
back
at
in
the
my
fucking
nostalgia
camera
brain,
work and
that's
the
what
color
whole
grading.
Star Trek 2009 movie is to me. An updated, modern, kinetic action adventure block.
Okay, this just for clarification here, dark and bleak and nihilistic is not doesn't equal genius. Okay, they're not the same thing. You can have a positive outlook on a show. You can have things look bright and fantastic and optimistic, and it can also be a genius work. Just because it's darker doesn't mean it's more mature, and just because it's darker doesn't mean it's better written.
And also, I really hate the fucking redesign of the Enterprise. It looks disgusting, almost. Like, everything from the bridge to the redesign of the actual ship itself.
But when you can see it,
horrible. Yeah, well, for when you can fucking see it with the camera, if it's too close all the time and it's got these
lens
horrible
flares.
shots and
lens flares everywhere.
No, not the lens flares, but.
It's too dynamic. It's always actiony. It's always cameras moving around, giving a guy a heart attack.
Also, for no reason, they just make the Enterprise 1,000 times bigger. They turn parts of the Enterprise into boiler tube rooms for some reason. I don't know. I don't understand what was the point in scaling up the Enterprise 1,000 times, other than, well, I guess we want it to be bigger because J.J. Abrams thinks bigger means better. Hey, look, we'll have the bridge, but bigger. Oh, look, we'll have the Enterprise, but bigger.
And the funny thing, when all the ships get destroyed and they just warp into that hot zone or whatever it was, everything's dead.
There's a saucer section of a ship, which was... All the ships we see warping were about the same size as the Enterprise, but yet this saucer section it flies through is fucking humongous. Where did this saucer section come from? You've just randomly scaled up ships very arbitrarily for no reason, so you can have some kind of tension as you fly through a field of space debris.
Blockbuster that, at least in my brain, still held true to the ethos and message of Trek, both in style and spirit. And that's because this movie holds a special place in my heart.
Doesn't that picture there, doesn't it look so optimistic?
After becoming a Trek,
doesn't it look absolutely that's the future you want to live in right there? Dark and desaturated. You got the Enterprise under construction on a planet for some fucking reason, and it's all broken apart because they haven't put it together yet.
Now, I haven't seen these movies, but does it actually call back to the heart and spirit of Star Trek? I doubt it.
No.
They take the roles of the 3 big characters, and they take all the roles, all the characters, they reimagine them, but they're pretty much the same. Just Kirk is a bit, well, I wouldn't say hot-headed, he's a bit loose. And it's kind of a retelling of how he became a captain, which doesn't make too much sense, or how he got the captain's chair at the very least.
We could definitely do it as like a movie night sort of thing.
I know, but even the poster looks ridiculous. Like, look what is Kirk doing? He's going to jump your bones? Like, what the hell? Is he staring at you? Going to kill you? Like, what's going on here?
Oh, well, what's Spock doing? Like, Spock's just kind of hiding behind Kirk's shoulder, like you see half of his face.
It looks like he,
really overly dramatic.
It kind of looks like he just got into the picture and he was very awkward because he doesn't know about these things because he's a Vulcan. He's like, okay, do I stand here? Okay. No, you're good, Spock. You're good. Okay, I'll stand here then. No, Spock, no! And they took the pictures, but it's too late.
There's the whole romance, not even a subplot. It's like a Uhura relationship thing with Spock.
Uhura and Spock.
Weird.
It's really strange.
She has a lot of dialogue with. It just doesn't. I don't know. It seems a little strange with
like
the action. It just stuff happens. Whoa!
And Spock puts a tracking device on Uhura. Sorry. Why does Spock put a tracking device on Uhura?
I can't recall.
Why is he a fucking creepy stalky boy?
Yeah. Thanks, JJ. Great interpretation of the whole species of Vulcans there.
Spock sounds like he's now an emotional psychopath. To go along with the other emotional psychopaths that SJWs tend to write. I don't know what is it about neurotic men, emotional psychopathic men? They just always have to write about. Like every single character they write is an emotional sociopath or psychopath or of some flavor. I don't know why they can't really seem to write another character. It's very, very interesting.
In 2009 at the age of 11. Oh dear God, time flies so fast. After I first encountered Star Trek with the Star Trek Nemesis audiobook that my father played in the car.
I'm glad we're together now.
What?
You played an audiobook in the car? Where were you traveling so long that you would have an audiobook played in the car? That is okay. I mean, these are really interesting stories this guy's telling us, or this girl's telling us. It's like, what is a fascination with Star Trek, and why do you like it so much? Audiobooks in the car, that's pretty personal. I don't know. If your whole family or your dad is driving around and he's into it too, I mean, that'd be pretty interesting. I don't know. I've never had a family or a scenario where you're playing an audiobook with everyone. I'm just trying to imagine, like, that's like a group telling thing. Maybe this is like story time for the family or something. Going on a trip. I'm not against it. It's just very strange.
And then began watching reruns of The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager on Spike TV, the manly man's channel. God, that channel did not work out for me.
What?
But Star Trek 2009 was the first time
Spike Lee, I don't know. It's just a channel, a station back in the day. It's probably still around, but it had a bunch of stuff, science fiction, fantasy, movies.
That was a joke at her changing gender.
I don't know. Let's just keep going.
Okay.
I got to see Trek on a scale that felt larger than life and fit with its importance in my life. What Star Trek had come to.
Why does a movie fit in your importance of your life? What are you talking about? It's a movie.
Oh God, I fucking hate the Enterprise design. Look at how bulbous the nacelles are. Like, they're really big at the front, and then they get smaller at the back, and it looks really weird.
I'm just trying to understand, if a movie comes out, it defines my life or whatever the hell. Like, what does that do to me? It's like, wow, that was a great movie. I mean, no. It was
it's
part
weird
of my
to say
life.
that a film defines your life. I don't even think, as much as a fan I'm of a lot of things, I wouldn't say that they define my life. I think I define myself more than anything.
I could say some stage productions were pretty amazing, pretty emotional, but they weren't like life-changing. Wow, that was a great depiction of Barbara Seville. Oh my God, it was amazing. I was like, I was there. Like, you were there. Didn't change my life. The Lion King on stage, amazing. Okay.
Mean to me. And honestly, thinking back on that experience sitting in the theater still melts me inside. Yet, it's for that exact reason that I honestly had a ton of trepidation coming back to this movie for this video. I wanted to do a video on Star Trek 2009, but I worried, what if all this memory was just my nostalgia clouding my brain?
Well,
Star
it
Trek
was.
2009
Yep.
was really where our current modern era of Star Trek, from Discovery
Oh,
to Picard
no.
to the upcoming Strange New Worlds, really began. So much of the visual style, tone, and fast-paced energy that J.J. Abrams began here has clearly influenced all of Star Trek moving forward. This movie,
Yes, do
this
you know
moment,
why?
is where
Because
Star
of
Trek,
fucking Alex
a franchise that
Kurtzman.
changed pop culture forever and inspired millions, including myself, with its message of hope and optimism for humanity's diverse
You
future.
see, that's the
Either
real
was saved
Enterprise
from
right there.
irrelevance
That's
after
that's the real one. That's the good-looking one. I want that one. I don't want budget fucking J.J. Abrams Enterprise.
It's so crazy. The Digimon movie defined my life. Well, you know, Digimon is actually at the time was a lot bigger than Pokemon. I don't know how they compare nowadays, but big deal in Japan for kids at least. Not sure about adults who are reminiscing about the past.
You know, if Jessie Gender's currently wearing red, and she's a red shirt, does that mean that we could kill her and it'd be perfectly fine?
I'm trying to think of an analogy where that works. Maybe in the Mary Sue fan fiction for sure. Yeah.
nearly disappearing forever, if you ask one group, or was irrevocably defiled by J.J. Abrams, the
Destroyer of Chairs.
Wait, Star Trek didn't disappear forever. What the fuck are you on about? Star Trek disappearing forever? They just
I don't know. I like how they have to pick the picture. J.J. Abrams giving the most smug face anyone has ever given. Like, yes, I destroyed your franchise. So what? You can't touch me. I'm off to Star Wars next.
Yeah.
Like, Star Trek didn't go away forever. The last season of Star Trek Enterprise was in 2005. And at that point, I believe it was Rick Berman and Brian Braga who were trying to find someone else to pass it on to. But then, before they could start working on a new series, I think it was CBS and Viacom split. And that left Paramount, which was owned by Viacom, and CBS on another part. So I think CBS owned the TV license, while Paramount owned the movie license, or the other way around. Maybe, I don't know. I think it's that's the way it is.
I heard about a plan or something that where they would not release a new Star Trek series, a TV show, while the movies were still in production.
Well, I don't hear anything like that, but I just know that stopped the current production of Star Trek. Then Brian Bragg and Rick Berman went off to do other things, and then the executives put it in the hands of J.J. Abrams, and they gave him a film, and because of that, we ended up with Star Trek 2009 and all the other Star Trek that came after that. So really, Star Trek didn't disappear for a long period of time. In fact, the most it was off screen was 4 years, and that was the amount of time between Voyager and Enterprise in terms of when it was aired. So Voyager ended in 2001, and Enterprise started in 2001. So so it started the same year as Voyager ended. Okay, I'll give it that, but still 4 years. I don't think is that much amount of time, considering that you also have to take into account the production of new Trek and level of uncertainty.
There were a lot of other pitches going on for Star Trek, and we're hearing about them now because of Kurtzman and all the other plans that they have. So it wasn't as if they weren't trying to get more Star Trek. It's just that the production company was like, no, we're not doing that. We're saving money.
Yeah, we know that it didn't disappear forever. So that's my point.
Right. In comparison to, let's say, Stargate, where there are lots of people pitching for that stuff, even after the cancellation of the shows, to make movies and this and that, and they're just not budging. So.
And hold on, we'll get to Abrams and Alex Kurtzman as well.
Oh my
don't worry.
God,
but to
that
get
photo.
to the heart of the matter, while I want this video to be my retrospective on Star Trek 2009 as a whole,
I wonder if we could get that photo and then make wanted posters.
For a second,
Wanted for murder. Wanted for murder. Star Trek franchise.
Screenshot.
Kurtzman killed Picard, by the way. That's something that actually did happen. He killed Picard off, so that was his fault. He did commit murder.
Let's go to it.
I'm trying to get to the point where...
And hold on, we'll get
There
to
it is.
Abrams
There it
and
is.
Alex Kurtzman
Okay.
as
I'll take a screenshot now.
My God.
That'd be cool if you have an old Western style wanted poster. That'd be cool. That'd be nice for to use in some places.
Memes?
And you can put that in your video Shining in the background of your bar or whatever it is.
Okay, I'll put it in Dr. Alpha. Please, someone make a fucking. Please make a wanted poster.
I think they have the same frames. Well, not exactly the same, but the same shape. Same haircut? No, not really. Okay. All right, we're going.
Well, don't worry. But to get to the heart of the matter, while I want this video to be my retrospective on Star Trek 2009 as a whole, I came into this project in order to truly answer for myself this one simple question. Is Star Trek 2009 really Star Trek?
To boldly go where no one has gone before.
My guess would be no.
The year is 2005. After a run of 10 movies beginning with Star Trek the Motion Picture in 1979 and an unprecedented 18-year, 4-series run on TV, with the commercial and critical failure of Star Trek Nemesis on the big screen in 2002 and the cancellation of Star Trek Enterprise in 2005, despite the series finally garnering critical acclaim for its amazing final 2 seasons and its even better amazing series finale episode Terra Prime that was totally the final episode and not anything else, Star Trek.
So let me run this down real quick. So Nemesis is the one where Robert dies and not Patrick Stewart, but Picard's nephew dies in a fire. And
No.
Was that First Contact?
That was Generations. That
Was that Generations?
He gets his news that I think his everything died in a fire or something
Which is crazy. If you're talking about the future with fire
On Earth, everyone just dies in fire.
It's like, how did that even happen?
You probably have a fire department that can be there. They can go warp
instantly.
Never mind
if
a
I
fire
have a ship
department
that goes around there and puts out the fire with water.
They have
a ship that just carries a whole ocean. Just drop it on the vineyard.
They can teleport water. They have a weather network that can control the weather. They could probably make it rain within seconds if they wanted. But okay, a fire killed off his family in his old rustic stone chateau. All right, okay.
But I remember Star Trek Nemesis being very dark in spirit. It was very dark, very bleak, and like had a lot of torture and all kinds of stuff. It didn't feel very Star Trek to me. It was interesting, but it wasn't very Star Trek. There was no like optimism.
We also don't talk about insurrection.
What do you mean? What's something called insurrection? There was, but as far as Nemesis goes,
fucking puberty. Oh my god! Why would you want Worf to go through fucking puberty in your film? Who made this?
they always have to mock Worf. Worf is always the guy to go to insult and humiliate. I don't know why, but that seems to be the case.
Why did they give him? I know that everyone was being regenerated by the planet and all that, but fucking Worf puberty, fuck off.
But the Nemesis, it went the dark route. It went full on with the dark and gritty and non-idealistic or non-utopian route. It didn't seem that way at all. And as this person says, it was a critical failure. So people don't go to Star Trek for dark and bleak. You want good endings, or not necessarily good endings, or we do want good endings. We don't necessarily need the happiest of endings, but we want good endings. We want something that will eventually still adhere to the idealistic utopian view the Star Trek holds,
and something that's well written.
Yeah, and something that's well written. We didn't get really any of that with Star Trek Nemesis, and I don't know. Isn't from everything I've heard from the new movies, like the J.J. Abrams movies, they were more or less dark and bleak as well.
Yes,
there's pump full of action, and everything was crazy, pumped up in the hype as Plinko would put it into hyperdrive or something.
Yes,
yeah, that's kind of obfuscates the fact that it isn't Star Trek. It's just a action movie, as far as I've heard, with like a Star Trek coat of paint over it.
I really want to put you in a torture chair now and make you watch Star Trek 2009. I really want to.
It's not that bad. Come on.
It is.
It's a different take on Star Trek. It's not as horrific as Discovery or Picard.
It's not as horrific as Discovery or Picard, but still, it is the spark that lit the fire that burnt down Star Trek.
Okay, I'll give you that one. Here's Adam Wooford. Yeah, where the hell is Buck Rogers in the 31st century? And we have been waiting over 40 years. I guess the universe is dead. I think there was a TV series of Buck Rogers back in the day, in the 70s or so. I can't remember. I wasn't born then, but I'm assuming there was. I seem to recall some sort of sci-fi showing. That's back in the 70s or late 70s, when science fiction was taking off at the movies, B films, TV, books, that sort of thing. So it was there, but I don't think it was that big a brand to constitute a TV show, or was it? I don't
There you go, Let Dev. Someone's already done it.
Okay.
Very appropriate. Wait, $1 million. Now they just need a gang name. That'd be perfect. The Bad Robot Gang. There we go. That'll work.
That didn't take too long. Holy crap.
Yeah, there's some very good people in Let Dev's Discord who like to make memes.
Best chat. Best chat.
All right. Well, good job. Let's keep on going.
Was officially dead.
Well, now it is.
His was the most human. While the Trek franchise...
It is now. I mean, if you look at the numbers, when we start off each of these new Star Trek shows, and then immediately their audience gets cut in half. So yeah, it is pretty much dead now.
Star Trek still wasn't dead because you had fucking Enterprise at least. And I get Enterprise is questionable, but it still was a show which was active. It didn't stop producing till 2005. 4 years before we got fucking J.J. Abrams' Trek. It's not that long of time. Clone Wars was off air for much longer.
Executive producer Rick Berman had begun work on a new film called Star Trek The Beginning with Band of Brothers screenwriter Eric Jenderson that would have focused on an ancestor of Captain Kirk during the Earth-Romulan War set right after Star Trek Enterprise. The film came to a screeching halt when Viacom, the owner of Paramount Pictures, separated from CBS Corporation, causing a split of the Trek franchise, with Paramount owning the movie rights to Star Trek and CBS retaining ownership of the TV rights and the franchise brand as a whole. And with that, it seemed like Star Trek might never return. But you never can keep a good sci-fi property down because president of Paramount, Gail Berman, managed to convince CBS chief executive Leslie Moonves, who notoriously hated Star Trek, to allow Paramount 18 months to develop a new Star Trek film before the studio Paramount would lose the rights to the franchise overall. Gail Berman tuned to the creative team behind the recently successful Mission Impossible 3, director J.J. Abrams and screenwriters Alex Kurtzman and Robert Orci, who then brought on producers Damon Lindelof and Brian Burke, who had worked with all of them previously. With films like critical and commercial successes Casino Royale and Batman Begins rebooting iconic franchises for the modern day, Kurtzman and Orci decided to take inspiration from an older script called Star Trek The Academy Years, a film that was almost made after Star Trek V, and focus their script on a young Kirk and Spock.
Okay, are we talking about the movie or just the history of Star Trek during the 2000s? I mean, why are we doing this?
I mean, for the most part, she's being accurate. So.
Sure, but this has nothing to do with understanding how this movie is a masterpiece.
Well, I think what she's trying to get at is the audience. She's trying to reframe in history to say, well, Star Trek was dead, and then J.J. Abrams came along, and J.J. Abrams saved everything, and that's why we still have Star Trek to this day.
For their iconic 5-year mission seen in the original series. So here's where I have to pause this little history lesson to contextualize all this, because back then, J.J. Abrams, Damon Lindelof, and Alex Kurtzman were not as polarizing as figures as they're known as today.
Yes, because before they didn't ruin the fucking 3 franchises.
And Alex Kurtzman wasn't the man who was apparently being fired from CBS every...
It's kind of like the same idea that, you know, Hannibal Lecter was well liked and respected as a psychiatrist, and then they found out he was a murderer, and then, you know, he wasn't as respected or liked anymore by the people around him. Yeah, people change their minds about people, especially when they find out they murdered somebody important to them.
Yeah. Hey, look, they're not controversial figures because A, no one fucking knew about them. B, they hadn't. Technically, before you do a crime, no one cares that you've done a crime. It's usually after the crime you've done that people care.
2 weeks because of how terribly he ruined Star Trek with Discovery or Picard, while simultaneously somehow convincing the company to make 500 Star Trek spin-offs that, quote, nobody wants. And Damon Lindelof
yes,
was
no one wants them.
What do you mean, quote, nobody wants? Nobody, no, seriously, like, it's not even an exaggeration. Nobody wants them. First of all, there's a reason why Lower Decks cannot get an international distributor, because no one wants it. What do you say? They sold Picard for nothing to Amazon, and they lost a bunch of money.
They sold originally they sold Discovery to Netflix for a lot of money. It's not disclosed how much, but it is. We are told that it was way more than the initial season 1 production cost, which meant that the entire season 1 for Discovery was already being paid for by Netflix. But then, when Discovery did extremely poorly on Netflix, Netflix didn't want to buy Picard at all. They said, "No, we're not taking this." And they kept lowering down the price, and they still didn't want it.
Yeah, nobody wants this stuff.
They eventually went to Amazon for Picard, and they actually went to them a couple of times before Amazon finally said, lower the price and we'll take it. How about that? And even then, Amazon still wasn't happy with what they bought.
I think they lost a lot of money too, probably.
I don't know if they lost money, but I'd say that they definitely weren't happy.
So yeah, I mean, they managed to peddle these little franchise series off. They managed to peddle them around, but it's not as clear cut as, yeah, we love them. We want to do this. There's so much popularity for this. No, it wasn't. It's not as clear cut as that. It's they barely managed to pawn these things off.
Announcing
they had a bunch of puppies that nobody wanted, and it's like, okay, fine, we'll take it. Fine, we'll take it. And then not even that. It's not only the companies refused to take these things until they had the proper sales technique, until they said fine. They just begrudgingly took it, and that's it. And it's not only just the companies who kind of begrudgingly took it. When the companies released these shows, you can see in the numbers that the audiences tend to start off moderately large, and then they dramatically fall. So it goes to like they get cut in half or below. And then not only that, the Rotten Tomato critics even hate Lower Decks. They gave it like a 62% as opposed to the audience score of 30-something%. So even Rotten Tomatoes, it does not give a high score to these shows. It's getting ridiculous. So no, it's provable with numbers and feelings and idea and the way people have communicated how they feel about these shows, as well as the numbers and the accumulated money with these shows, that they're not doing too well. The ratings are in the toilet. Everything is tanking. Audiences get cut in half. It's no one wants these shows. It's not so cold. No one wants these shows. Ha ha ha! You big dumb fanboys. No, it's real. It's real. It's a real sentiment out there that people do not want these Star Trek shows.
I believe that's what happened with the second last episode of Picard. I think they were mentioning that the viewership cut almost in half, and it was just a huge drop. Even though they've already paid for a second season, I don't know if they've begun filming. I don't know. I know they haven't begun filming for Brave New Worlds, or whatever that show is called.
Brave New Worlds and a lot of the other things that they've announced, there is nothing happening with them so far. All they've announced is a title, and they're trying to get fans hyped up on a title, saying, hey, aren't you really excited for this? Guys, get excited. Please, guys, get excited. Otherwise, you're not able to do this show. Come on, show some more excitement. And it's a show of desperation that they keep announcing these shows, and then they're not even shows they're making. They just have titles. Someone has an idea in the office and think, yes, let's make that. Okay, let's get people hyped already. We don't have anything yet. We don't even have a script. But what we'll do is we'll go out there and we'll make an announcement, and hopefully people will get excited. And that's what happened with Section 31. Section 31 show got cancelled and binned, and they've done it with like so many other fucking shows that they've already fucking dropped. And the only one that they're really sticking with is Strange New Worlds and Prodigy.
Prodigy, I thought that got cancelled.
Strange New Worlds hasn't been cancelled. It's more nothing's happening in production. They haven't done anything with it. It's not cancelled.
No, I was referring to Prodigy.
Prodigy. No, it was given. What is it? It was already 2 seasons have been ordered by Nickelodeon, so they've already been paid for essentially.
Wonderful. Okay, well that's something at least. They're doing some work at least. Just not sure when we're going to see something. Probably next year, I'm assuming. Can't see a viewership or any sort of rating scale for expectations when nothing can actually be physically made because no one can work. So I would like to see
animation can still work.
Sure,
and,
maybe you could pay out, not in the actual studio, but maybe third party. That could happen, but even the premise of Prodigy is stupid. It just like I read up, I was like, that's not gonna fly. It's gonna be some sort of Mary Sue nonsense.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of what's been happening is people aren't interested in these shows. They don't want these shows, and it's nothing but desperation by CBS, just trying to go like a shotgun effect of just let's keep throwing things at a wall and see what sticks. To keep throwing them, but something will work. We've got to work.
Well, if the animation's anything like Lower Decks, I can't imagine anyone caring.
And then for like the leaks about like Alex Kurtzman being fired, I guess I haven't really heard any leaks about Alex Kurtzman being fired, mainly because he hasn't. But obviously we have heard the leaks of sort of like an internal war with CBS. And I guess there is kind of similar ones with Kathleen Kennedy, which maybe she's poking at more at. But even then, I think it's pretty obvious that the signs are there that Kathleen Kennedy is out at this point. But the problem is that Disney needs to save face because, like, if they give it to anyone else at this point, no one wants that job. No one wants to be the head of Lucasfilm right now because it's a shit show.
Or the creative genius behind HBO's Watchmen. In fact, for me at the time, this was the
creative genius behind Watchmen. Okay, it's pushing it, but fine.
The dream team to make Star Trek. These were the creators behind some of the biggest science fiction works of the time, like Alias, Lost, Fringe, and the aforementioned franchise redefining Mission Impossible 3. That's not to say that was the best movie in the series, but it definitely helped put that series on a new course, just like Star Trek 2009.
The funny part is I haven't seen a single one of those
this creative
films.
team had their detractors at the time, but they were well-respected creators by most of sci-fi fans at the time. Before our
in terms of they never heard of them, they never watched these films.
Alias is a mixed bag. It was kind of like a father-daughter sort of thing, I think. I never seen any of those, and they never really appealed to me. So maybe they are good. Maybe they were. Lost, I never even bothered. I didn't care about it. Never interested me at all.
Lost, as far as I'm aware, is... Apparently it ends extremely poorly.
Oh, yeah.
Because of J.J. Abrams' mystery box theory. But I haven't watched Lost. Nor do I want to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the mystery box theory is basically just, here's a bunch of interesting questions. What are the answers? The questions are more fun than the answers. I mean, it's something about what happens, about the friends you make along the way, right? It's about the questions and the mysteries, about the journey.
John Lenley makes a good point. Wait, Mission Impossible 3 was sci-fi?
I never saw it, so I can't say.
Apparently, I guess.
Apparently it's the best sci-fi.
I'll have to ask Southpaw. He knows all about Mission Impossible. Anyway.
These creators' symbols in our current politicized culture war between SJWs and neckbeard Nazis. In fact, this...
Whoa, that's...
Yes, the two sides.
No in-betweens.
That escalated quickly.
Nazis and SJWs, whoa.
That escalated quickly. SJW are neckbeard Nazis. Yeah, that does the infamous two sides. You can only be an SJW or a neckbeard Nazi. Anyone who opposes the SJWs are neckbeard Nazis.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Can't be anyone else.
Can you imagine a Nazi liking Star Trek?
A utopian future where all races get along?
The Steve Shives video, was it why do Nazis like Star Trek, or was it why do conservatives like Star Trek? I can't remember which one it was. We covered it.
Why do not?
Steve Shires just pretty much says, "Oh, just because you're conservative doesn't mean you're an asshole, but it just means you think like an asshole." Like, really, Steve Shires? Yeah, really, Steve Shires. I mean, why even obfuscate? Why even put up an illusion? Just tell us what you mean. I mean, this person obviously did. If you don't like the SJW stuff, you're a neckbeard Nazi. There's nothing else to your character. You're just a neckbeard Nazi.
So I just quickly looked up Steve Shive Nazi, and I find, why don't we just be nice to Nazis? 5 things about Nazis. Is Demar actually a good Nazi? These are all videos by him, I want to point out.
We have to cover that tomorrow. We have to cover
is Demar a Nazi problem?
Is Demar a good Nazi? What? Like Demar from Star Trek DS9?
Yes.
Okay,
we'll cover Space Nine.
Send me that one. We'll cover that one tomorrow.
Oh my god. I don't think I want to, but fine, I'll send you that one.
He ends up
It's
dying
got the
for his
like
people.
dislike ratio removed.
Well, yeah, of course it does.
I also sent you also a past live stream as well for Lower Decks. Basically, it's the voice actors behind it, and they say some things which I think are definitely worth criticizing. You just have to skip over the short clip of them playing Lower Decks because we've already seen it, and just to go over it, just in case there's no just for copyright reasons.
All right, and then we're all neckbeard Nazis, guys. I didn't know this, but we're all neckbeard Nazis, I guess.
Yeah, some of us actually like shaving. We enjoy the experience, so you know.
Yeah, shaving is good. Shaving is good.
I shave when I can bother to shave. Usually, it just gets really irritating on my face. Like, oh fuck it, I'll shave it off.
The next time,
there's no point looking good these days. There's no point shaving it. I'm not going out the door many times a week anymore. I'm stuck in a fucking house because of coronavirus.
That's fair. That's fair. But do it for yourself.
When I go to uni, I will shave, but now there isn't much of a point.
Gentlemen, be sure whenever you're going out of the house, look good. Okay. I'm not advocating like whatever that crazy advertisements on these videos, like Manscaped or whatever the hell they're called. Just once in a while, look good for some people. And if you think that's shaving, fine. If you have a beard, go for it. Trim it. That's great. But keep it neat.
Hygiene is good. Hygiene is excellent. Excellent
Hygiene is attractive. And then, okay, so the video actually is what do conservatives actually like about Star Trek? And we covered it 3 months ago. And we're actually the second video to come up when you search for it.
All right. We're good? Let's go.
Yeah.
That began that culture war within the Trek fandom, as I mentioned previously. This endless fight between if something is really Star Trek or not. J.J. Abrams himself admitted to not really being a Trek fan when he signed on to the film, having actually played Star Wars as a kid.
Got you.
Surprise, surprise. I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that.
I knew that. I knew that.
I just kind of guessed that he was not a Star Trek fan because of how he portrayed Star Trek.
Again, he outwardly came out as, I'm not really a big fan of Star Trek, actually.
Actually, I'm not even convinced he's a Star Wars fan, considering how he portrayed Star Wars.
To be
fair, pretty bad stuff.
You don't have to actually be a fan of something to be a good director or producer. But if you're writing something, you have to learn.
It's definitely important. It is extremely important to understand something if you're going to, especially in an existing franchise like Star Wars or Star Trek.
Sure,
you need to have a very good understanding of what you are writing and directing for and all that shit.
I agree. This is fine, but you could like pick that up as you go. The same with what was that interview? Not the interview. The casting for Robert Beltran, who is the actor for Chakotay. He had no idea what a Klingon was. Like he was talking to Leonard Nimoy, and he got the role. So you know, things like that. It's like, yeah, if you don't know anything, that's fine. But once you're on the job, you better learn quick.
There's a difference between an actor and a director and a writer, because when you're directing and writing and all that shit, there is a big difference because you're actually writing the story. But then when you're an actor, you're just being told to act.
This is fine.
So the actor's only impact towards the story is portraying the character.
I totally
as long
understand.
as they can portray the character right.
I would argue though, if you are dispassionate or you're not one way or the other, and you learn, oh, this is what Star Trek is. Okay, now I know. As opposed to, I'm going to do my own thing because I'm JJ. Like that's kind of the
Even
attitude.
The actor for Chakotay is a plank of fucking wood.
Yeah, he kind of was. I enjoyed him because for certain reasons, like every once in a while, but he wasn't the most interesting. The most interesting was obviously the Doctor and 7 of 9. But the thing is, yeah, you
9 for two very big reasons.
Two very big reasons: character arc and character. So, also, one thing is, yeah, you can totally pick things up. That's something you can do. You don't have to necessarily be a fan. You could totally pick things up. J.J. Abrams, however, obviously didn't.
Yeah, exactly. So if he did actually read some books and watch some shows and talk to actors and producers and writers, that would be great. The characters are the same. They're just reimagined. And the problem isn't the reimagining of the characters. That's, your interpretation. It's how it's shown on the screen, which is the style, which is what JJ is known for, which doesn't quite feel like Star Trek. It's too much action. It's too much explosions and techniques with the camera that I don't think it needed. But that is an argument toward the movie as a movie being an entertaining piece of work.
I should congratulate JJ for even somehow managing to find a way to fit in a fucking car product placement in his fucking film.
That was driving off a cliff, literally, but yes.
It quite literally was driving off a cliff. But he managed to get a fucking car product placement in a film. About Star Trek and spaceships.
Okay, semi-hot take from John Lemley. Thank you, sir. Damon Lindelof did more to ruin Watchmen than JJ did to Star Trek and Star Wars. Rian Johnson is probably tied with... Really? I've never watched the Watchmen movie. I've never watched the Watchmen series. I'm very happy with the book, and that's as far as I want to go. The book is one of the best.
You're the expert on all things comic. Go.
Well, the Watchmen is the best. It's the Watchmen comic book is the best version of Watchmen so far.
What about the film?
Out of the film and especially TV series, the book is far a superior product. The film was okay, I guess. Even if you read the book, the film was okay. It leaves out a lot of context because they can't fit it all in one film. But it's okay. I say it's okay. I don't know why. One huge problem though is it gave some people superpowers, which is kind of the opposite of what they wanted to go. So I mean, besides Dr. Manhattan, like what's your name? Silk Spectre and Night Owl could break bones as if they had super strength. That never happened in the book. They were people in costumes.
I think the only one who did that was the comedian. He was really violent. So
yeah. But he was really strong. He was like the strong guy who goes insane. So yeah. He was that sort of character trope or archetype or whatever. But the comedian is not just a psychopath. He has a very interesting arc if you read the book. But the thing is, the comic book of Watchmen is far superior than the movie, and definitely far superior than the TV show.
Especially it came out in the 80s? I can't remember when it came out, but maybe it might have been the 90s. When I read it, I thought, wow, what a great take on the superhero genre, on villains, on Rorschach was just amazing. I thought that was the best character, most interesting character in the whole stories. So,
without a doubt.
So they did a lot of great, like Alan Moore was great, and he was kind of like, hating on these fans who like these stories, but he still produced a good quality product. So that I appreciate. And I don't want to go and, let's interpret this as that. Same way with Frank Miller. Some people do great adaptations of Frank Miller's work, and that's fine. But it's a lot easier to do a Frank Miller adaptation than an Alan Moore anything.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I don't think they've made one Alan Moore film that has lived up to the book. I enjoyed V for Vendetta; it was fine. I enjoyed the Watchmen movie; it was fine. But it's nowhere near the majesty of the original works.
Yeah, for sure.
Alan Moore is a weird, mad wizard of comics. It's really hard to copy that or to adapt that into a standalone film. But one thing I hate about Watchmen is not the book itself, but what people turn the book into. So every time you hear these people argue that comics have always been political, they just laugh in your face. Well, I guess you never read Watchmen before. No, Watchmen is not political. It's not. It has politics in it, but it's not political. In fact,
no, I say it's political, and therefore it is.
It's interpreted. It's all subjective. No, it's not political. It has politics in it, but it actually goes out of its way, if you read the story correctly, to it actually goes against the idea of partisan politics. So it has like the U.S. versus the Soviet Union and the capitalist versus communist or whatever. It has that in there, but the story itself is not political. In fact, it scoffs and mocks the idea of politics, because at the very end, Ozymandias, he actually puts a plan in order that actually breaks down politics, and that it's the whole thing has nothing to do with politics. Like the entire overarching conflict between the America and the USSR is pretty much has nothing to do with the story. It's just a conflict to kind of paint the backdrop of the story in a darker tone, but it actually has nothing to do with it. Not really, except for the whole plan. Like its only real factor is providing the looming threat of mutual destruction with nuclear weapons, and the fact that it sparks Ozymandias to do what he does. But Ozymandias is the real guy behind the curtain. The governments, they're there, they're present. But it's really Ozymandias who really runs the show behind the curtains. He's a real villain behind the scenes. And the ending is that the villain technically wins through moral checkmate. So either they keep a secret and tell everyone, yeah, it was totally aliens, and then break world peace, or they keep the secret and say that, yeah, it was totally aliens, and keep world peace. They could tell the truth and have all those people die for nothing and get the wars ramped back up, or they could just, let the lie stand, and you have world peace between the two governments that have been fighting for a good long while. So it has politics in it. Someone might feel political. Someone might feel that the story is political, but it really isn't.
It's very similar to Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. There's all these leaders in there. There's all this representative of the federal government, the state government. One page has all the representatives, but it's not about American politics per se. It's in there, but it's really a story about Bruce Wayne going through the motions of being Batman again. So, yes.
Yojimbo has a perfect quote from the book that kind of sums up the entire real message behind Watchmen. You are a life itself. You are rare than quirk and unpredictable, and even beyond the dreams of Heisenberg. Now dry your eyes and let's go home. So that was that whole interaction between Laurie and Dr. Manhattan is kind of the crux of the message behind Watchmen, is that in a world where life seems cheap, where life seems like nothing makes sense, and it's a world that
it's the trailer you selling us now.
What?
In a world.
Oh yeah, but it really is. That Watchmen paints a world where life feels cheap, or nothing feels special. I think that might be where our modern creators have gotten the idea that nihilism sells, when it absolutely doesn't. Because with the idea behind Watchmen, it feels nihilistic, but it really is not. Because the whole story feels nihilistic up until that point, up until Dr. Manhattan has an interaction with Laurie, and he figures out the fact that everyone is special, everyone is unique, because he looks at Laurie's background, and her parents are the comedian and the original Silk Spectre, and how these two people hate each other, how they despise each other, how he almost raped Silk Spectre, and how they should have never gotten together. But against all odds, she was born until it was only her. And it's these random occurrences, these random chances that no one can ever think about or see or predict, that were victory and miracles. That's how they happen. That's how they occur. So even the smallest, most seemingly insignificant human life is important, and that's the conclusion that Dr. Manhattan, a man who can see through time and who has separated himself so far from regular humanity that he barely even cares about it anymore. That's the conclusion he comes up with. A man who is now a man looking in from the outside, looking in at humanity. Someone who is observing humanity from the outside now, because he's elevated himself so much to the metaphysical plane. That is the story of Watchmen. It's not nihilism. Watchmen doesn't sell because of nihilism. Watchmen does not sell because of politics and because it's political. Watchmen sells because that message rests at the heart of the story.
All right, I got some super chats to go through, so let's just go through these first. Tyler Preston, there you are, sitting at home watching Star Trek, and all of a sudden, you're a Neko beard? You didn't ask for this. You didn't choose this.
You didn't choose this.
But here it is. I don't know what a Neko beard is. I'm very sorry. What is a Neko beard? Does anyone know?
It's a mix of Neko speak and neckbeard.
Neko speak. This is a new term for me. I'm not hip to your groove, guys. What the hell are you talking about? Anyone know? Chat? Please tell me. I have no idea what a Neko beard.
Is that a cat girl beard? Is that a cat girl beard?
Neko. Okay. Neko. Okay. What the hell is a Neko beard then? Oh my goodness. That sounds a little necro beard. Yeah, I was like, maybe he missed a letter there. Yeah, I don't know. So it's a boomer. Yeah, that's me. A talking cat? I don't know. Forget it. Well, sorry we asked, guys. That's okay. Here's Dylan Smith. That car was a mid-60s Corvette. Oh, real beautiful. Imagine how old that would be in the Star Trek timeline, like joyriding in a steam plow in 2020. Well, I don't know. I don't know what they had replicators essentially in JJ Trek.
If they can build starships, they can build a car. It was just stupid that Kirk was driving a car.
Yeah.
At least it wasn't the Argo. That was a silly.
Oh, dear. Patrick Stewart loves cars. I think we're going to give him a car so we can have fun while he's acting.
He wants to drive really fast.
That's his hobby. He buys cars like that.
No sense. It has like it's supposed to be some kind of Starfleet reconnaissance vehicle, but yet it has like a single box for storage, 2 seats at the front. It's got no armor, so it can only go on like the whole thing isn't isolated and secured, so it can't exist on worlds which don't have oxygen atmospheres, because otherwise there's no way for the occupants to breathe.
It has a gun
and then there's no scientific equipment, and then you have the really bizarre turret that only fires at the back. It's got a very small arc that you have to wait until someone is driving directly behind you to fucking shoot at them. And why is a Starfleet car equipped with a fucking gun? Who knows? It's stupid.
Here's Dead Slash. Neither Moore nor Miller wanted their stories to be the direction that comics went. They were supposed to be one-offs. Well, Miller just did a whole bunch of creative stuff, and a lot of it was gory, and like most of his style is very visceral, very adult. So fancy that ended up being translated into movies quite often. So I think that was the appeal. He knew what worked for his audience. He put all his effort into that one thing, and then he moved on. So comic book industry in the 80s and 90s was very weird. And
I like how the comics kind of proceeded after that, with creators taking kind of the superficial elements of Frank Miller's work and Alan Moore's work, instead of the actual messages behind their books. So instead of The Dark Knight Returns, them saying, "Oh, look, heroes are about inspiration. They're about fighting against even the most momentous odds, even if they lose or die." Instead of taking that, like, "Oh, look, dark and gritty. All right, let's run with it." Same thing with Watchmen. Watchmen is a story about how humanity, no matter how small, is still significant and important in the world around them. Oh, wait, dark, gritty nihilism? Let's go with that. Let's run with that.
Yeah.
And Alan Moore and Frank Miller saying, "No, what are you doing?"
Well, look at
you kind of missed the whole point.
Look at the extent of his films. Like they had like the Wolverine. There was Sin City. I guess Sin City was pretty accurate. I guess that was probably the best rendition. But we're talking about a pulp comic. The style that he wanted to do noir, so it translates.
They got Sin City correct.
It translates very well. Elektra, I don't even know. I didn't even watch that. I'm guessing it wasn't very good. And 300, which I think was okay. I mean, that was still a bombastic expression of what that event in history could have looked like. Obviously not, but that was the point. It was supposed to be big, extravagant for these 300 men fighting off a bunch of Persians. So that's fine. Batman, that's its own thing. So that was
I suppose talking on Star Trek, I did find out that so Lower Decks takes place exactly 1 year after Nemesis. And I think it's 1 year before the Romulus explodes.
Oh, that's a thing. That's right, Picard. Oh, God.
So it's way before Picard, but just after Nemesis.
They're seriously trying to put into continuity? Like as a real thing? Like the continuity?
It's actually in the timeline. And officially
Wow.
described by the writers of the show, they say it's not a Star Trek parody, it's a Star Trek comedy. And that is officially how the writers of the show describe the show. They describe it as not a parody, but a comedy.
It is a parody, though. It seems like a parody to me.
Not all parodies are comedies, but... actually, no, all parodies are comedies. Yeah.
Not a parody.
Could be a satirical parody, but I don't know. That's... When you hate something and trying to figure out its genre, it's like, I can't quite put it in a box. It's too weird. It's too blah. It doesn't fit the genre. It doesn't fit the style. Definitely not the franchise. So... it's one of those strange moments in our fandom where we sit there and go, I don't know what to do with this thing. What do we call it? Is it a joke? Is it a satire? Does it hurt my soul? Like, what's going on with this show? It's scary stuff, guys. Okay.
Watching Star Trek Lower Decks is like being stabbed in the dick.
It's pretty painful, yeah. All right, we got some more. Guys, you got to slow down the super chats. I want to get through this video today, okay? Taker 610. So Watchmen isn't about a large blue appendage. I would say it is, actually. I think he's the only guy with superpowers in the whole show. So.
Official superpowers. Ozymandias has some sort of superpower. Like, he's really fast. He's really, really smart. And athletic, but he's not nearly on the level as Dr. Manhattan.
He's like a evil Batman, I guess. That's one way of looking at him. Yeah, as opposed to like other permutations or people wanting to copy Batman, like the Midnighter in The Authority, which is just like he's a sadist. So it's like, oh crap. So, yeah. Great character.
Let's get two more super chats and then we can go. Keep going.
EC Cons. I love 90s Batman, where Tim Drake is Robin, Dick Grayson is Nightwing, Jason Todd is a corpse, and Damian Wayne is non-existent. Exactly. Damian Wayne did not exist at that point in time.
No comments. Keep going. Just keep going. Next super chat.
All right. John Lemley. I used to think my life was a parody, but now it's a comedy. Yeah.
Now let's quickly start playing before the fucking super chats keep coming in.
Okay, let's keep going.
Which... well, we all know how that eventually goes.
You are a Palpatine.
Many have criticized Star Trek 2009 for being too much of a Star
she's obviously
Wars
not a fan of Rise of Skywalker,
not getting
then.
to the heart of Trek's more philosophical ideas and themes, and point to JJ's Star Wars fandom and his lack of understanding Star Trek to justify this argument. But just because someone doesn't know Star Trek doesn't mean they can't make good Star Trek.
Sure.
Sometimes we get
a lot of what people were saying, it was at the time people were saying, yeah, J.J. Abrams isn't good at making a Star Trek film. But what he'd be really good at is making a Star Wars film. And you fuckers, you motherfuckers, you put the idea in their head and they fucking put J.J. Abrams in a Star Wars film. This is on you. But no one ever said that, oh yeah, J.J. Abrams, the whole reason why Star Trek works better as a Star Wars film, it's because he's in the Star Wars fan. No, that's not the reason at all. It's just that a lot of people were saying he should go and make a Star Wars film that I would completely disagree. For obvious reasons.
Who apparently didn't know anything about the Star Trek.
I didn't quite know all the procedures, if you like, on the Star Trek.
And directed a crap movie as a direct result. But sometimes we also get someone like Nicholas Meyer, who didn't know anything about Star Trek and directed arguably the two most beloved Trek films, The Wrath of Khan and The Undiscovered Country. And knowing Star Trek backwards and forwards doesn't necessarily mean you'll deliver a great Star Trek film either. I'm looking at you, Ron Moore and Brandon Braga. I see what you did there with Generations. You should be ashamed of yourselves. There were 5 brains in the room conceiving what we wanted the movie to be. In those 5 brains were various degrees of fandom. Some of the more rabid fans, like Bob Orsi and Damon, were saying, I love this idea, but it feels like a violation of what we know Trek to be. And people who are absolutely fans but a little more neutral, like JJ Bryans and myself, were constantly walking the line of figuring it out. We were saying to ourselves, okay, we want to make a movie that's for fans, but we also want to make a movie that's for a whole new generation of people. What do I need to see if I don't know anything about Trek? I actually think that variance of perspectives is critical to Trek, because the spirit of the show was very much Roddenberry's, and it's always maintained an optimistic, hopeful universe about exploration. Ultimately about family and friendship, but I think the character's point of view reflected different writers who came along over the course of time. I do think it was important to have those voices. Alex Kurtzman. As Kurtzman's quote illuminates, Star Trek as a franchise holds true to ideas of optimism, hope, exploration, and friendship across differences, collisions of cultures, ideas, and norms.
Well, then what happened?
Yeah, what kind of argument is this? It's like, well, JJ didn't really like the whole original idea, even though he was a fan of Star Trek. It's like, well, once you're a fan, once you become a fan, you know the lore, you know the feeling, you know the vibe, you know the characters. Then you're a fan of Star Trek. You know what it should look like, what it should sound like. You don't say, hey, you know what? Let's just have a giant war where the entire Starfleet gets destroyed. And you just have the Enterprise come back. And you're like, wait, no. That's not the spirit of Star Trek. It's not massive war all the time and death and killing.
If Alex Kurtzman really was behind that quote, then holy fuck, he's behind some of the most nihilistic Star Trek I've ever seen. Looks over at Picard, Discovery. Why the fuck can't he be normal?
It's kind of strange to say the writer's room was in disarray. Therefore, that's just like Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future. It's like, no. It was optimistic. Everyone got along. They had arguments and they dealt with them easily. But you become the fan. You learn the lore. That's why I have no problems with people getting a job, as she mentioned about the creator of was Star Trek 2 and 6, I think. He knew to get in there, direct a proper film, and there you go. Maybe he wasn't part of the writer's work. Maybe he just directed. That's fine. But that's what you learn. You learn on the job. You do not go into a job being in charge, not knowing anything about the job, and expect to do a good job. It doesn't make sense. So I respect the fact that a professional can come in, let's say a professional chef who's never cooked Szechuan before, and all of a sudden, boom, they know how to use spices and they know how to use chili powder or what have you. I believe that. But you actually have to use the chili powder properly. You can't just guess it. You can't just say, oh yeah, science fiction has like ray guns, right? Let's put ray guns on all the ships. It's like, no. We have phasers in Star Trek, that sort of thing. So lore is very important. Characterization is very important. And reimagining characters can be done properly. And it's all up to a vision of the...
We have 2 super chats, by the way.
I know. We got 3, actually. John Lemley. Ozymandias is part of that whole Yale thing, though.
What Yale thing? I mean, that Yale thing. That Yale thing. Thank you, John Lemley.
Lore Reloaded. So this is a Ryan Johnson podcast, is what I'm hearing. No, it's an Alex Kurtzman podcast.
Lore Reloaded is the person we covered, was it a few streams ago?
Yeah, I know.
Or was it the... Let's see if I can remember which one it was, because it was a video.
Yeah, we did. We covered one.
So the Lore Reloaded one was... The Fandom Menace is fake. Is that Lore Reloaded? Or is that someone else? Oh, that's Urban. Which one was the Lore Reloaded video we covered?
I would have to do a search, but I know we did it a few episodes ago. So
yeah, so the last one we did was this lady. And then before that it was... No. Then it was Lakes. Fandom Menace Volume 1, was that it?
I don't know. I would I have to go back. My brain is not into that. So no, this is not a Ryan Johnson podcast. So but thanks for the super chat.
That's it. So Lore Reloaded is the person when we're doing the Fandom Menace Volume 1 thing.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, no, I remember his name. So
yeah, I remember the name as well.
Well, thank you, sir. Anyway. And let's keep going because we got a lot more to cover here. John Lemley, J.J. Abrams is the original Ultimate Wikia reader? Really? I'm trying to think of that. Is the Cole's Notes version of Star Trek or Star Wars?
There's kind of a thing of like a meme going around of people who don't really watch, so like the idea of fake fans, people who only read the wiki and don't actually watch the show, because there have been certain people, LitDev, we cover this on Morning Nonsense, where people were promoting at reading the wiki rather than watching the show.
Read the wiki rather than watch the show, so they can infiltrate fandom.
That's such a bizarre thing. It's like, 'cause surely the show is a lot more consumable than a wall of text. You don't have, like, I don't know, a couple hours to spare?
Are we talking about Wikipedia or like Wikipedia and Memory Alpha? Like, which ones are we referring to?
Well, Wikipedia and things like Memory Alpha, they're all kind of the same thing here. Like, they're all just Wikipedia's about a fandom page.
There's a lot of details on those pages I've never heard of as a, let's say, a casual watcher or an actual fan. I didn't know like the background stuff, so that's good in general. But when you actually watch the show, there's all these little details, obviously, that aren't showcased on the Wikipedia pages. So it depends what the argument is. It depends on how they talk. But if you have ever watched any episode of any series of Star Trek, you kind of get the vibe of, oh, it's episodic. There's characters exploring the galaxy. And you have alien interference of all sorts. So very different from Star Wars.
The very fact was echoed within the team in the creative process behind Star Trek 2009. These 5 men all came to Star Trek with different backgrounds and love for the franchise, all working towards the same goal of creating a Star Trek movie. These were 5 guys, now I'm hungry, who honestly seemed to care a lot about if this movie was Star Trek or not. They constantly asked themselves the question, what does Star Trek mean? And how can we take that message and somehow make it speak to people who have fallen in love with this world over several decades, and people who may have looked at this show and go, that nerdy show? So then, that leads us to the next.
I don't think that's the right attitude.
People who wouldn't have liked it. Star Trek 2009 was a movie which was taking the name of Star Trek, throwing everything out the window, and trying to be for a completely different audience. So the whole thing was, it's trying to be a show, a really cool, flashy action show for general audiences.
Right.
And it's trying to just basically, it's using the name of Star Trek to get butts and seats because it's an established name that people know of, but not necessarily have actually seen anything of. So they think, oh, look, it's a new Star Trek film. Okay, I'll give it a look. But, oh, that's actually pretty interesting when they haven't seen everything else. But it's just going for nothing else but the general audiences.
Yeah, that could be the casual watcher who knows a little bit about Star Trek, but this is a reimagining of it's a reboot, essentially. So they took some liberties, they took some lore. So I'm not saying JJ was completely ignorant of the lore. He obviously knew the characters to some capacity, and he told the story because each of the characters have their little moment to shine in the movie, which is nice. I don't mind that. It's kind of, an ensemble cast to begin with, but I appreciate that. That was a nice touch to the thing. But it is certainly a popcorn munching blockbuster sort of experience, which is not what Star Trek is supposed to be. I remember the first Star Trek movie, when I was a kid, but that was like weird. I was like, I don't get this. This is too 70s sci-fi for me. And that's what a lot of the science fiction shows and movies back then were like. They were just weird and strange. So it was a reimagining. And if you didn't like the reimagining, it's totally cool. But it was still an entertaining movie for what it did, even though it reinvented stuff. But that was kind of the point of the film, I think. I think the idea was to reboot the franchise for whatever reason. I'm not going to get into the debate of why that was good or bad, but it did attract people. And the problem was the second and third films didn't really keep people there. They didn't work too well, even though I think the second film did well financially. I'm trying to remember.
It did well financially, but still not well written.
Oh, yeah, that's a totally different argument, yeah.
Obvious question. Did these men find an answer that satisfied that question? Did it bring in new fans and old? Or did these men just create an adventure film in the line of Star Wars with the veneer of Star Trek? Or did they create something truly in the spirit of what Trek is?
Well, you've got an uphill battle here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the first thing we have to do when discussing is this in the spirit of Star Trek question is to first answer the question, is this a good movie? And yes, a good movie doesn't necessarily mean it's a good Star Trek movie, and conversely, a good Star Trek movie doesn't have to inherently be a good movie. Cough, cough, insurrection, cough, cough.
Oh, well, it's hardly noticeable.
Plus, it's my video and I want to rant about this movie, so you can all
The
deal
green
with that.
screen's
I think
bugging
the best
me.
place to start with this movie to determine if it's a good movie or not is the cast. And boy, I do not envy what the casting directors and J.J. Abrams had to do with recasting some of the most iconic and beloved characters in all of pop culture with this film, yet they absolutely nailed it. Chris Pine perfectly captures the energy of this younger version.
Okay, casting is a whole other thing. There's lots of movies which are bad, which have all kinds of great cast members. It's not a big deal.
I think Chris Pine and a handful of others were good choices. Some are questionable.
This is not a big argument, really. They could have gotten horrible casting, and if they were good actors, it would have worked fine. So,
Of Captain Kirk, excellently bringing both the spirit of a rebel against the system, and yet still gives us echoes of a man who would be captain. Able
Yeah,
to
but he
take
goes
charge
from
and lead
ensign
those
to
around
captain
him.
in
Carl
a
Urban
really
does a pitch-perfect
weird
divorce.
way. He just goes straight from ensign to fucking commander to then outranks, get Spock fucking kicked out of the captain's chair to then become captain. Why does he make Kirk commander? No, he's not even supposed to be on the Enterprise. He was supposed to be punished for fucking up the simulator.
well, again, we're talking about the actual casting, not the character. Obviously, the character of Chris Pine's Kirk is a lot different from Shatner's, so that's obvious. So I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying, as a casting choice, fine. That's totally fine. I don't.
Maybe I'll just get into just randomly ranting about the writing problems in the film, because that's something that I'm mostly stuck on. It's like that's a really stupid idea to just put an ensign in charge of a fucking starship.
But when it comes to casting, do they look the part? Do they sound the part? That's all I care about. That's all you have to do with casting. Does this guy look like a Kirk? Yeah, he's fine.
Pitch perfect DeForest Kelly, channeling the late actor's mixture of charm and cantankerousness, as well as his classic racism.
Are you out of your Vulcan mind?
Speciesism?
That's
something
not
like
a that's
But
not a
Urban
racism.
Yeah, that's just him getting emotional at Spock. It's a very common joke in the original series. Like, he's always yelling at Spock because Spock is the logical, constantly non-emotional, non-human, yet half-human person. And then you have McCoy, who's just pure human, pure emotion.
I don't think it's being discriminatory against him in any way.
No,
I don't
they're
think
friends.
he's using it as a slur.
No, they're not. They're totally not. And we get that from watching the original show. In this, it's not insulting, I don't think, at all.
Constantly bounces off of Kirk as a friend and sounding board, as well as Spock's emotional consciousness, perfectly fitting into Trek's holy trinity of character dynamics. Zoe Saldana's Uhura, a character often relegated to the background in the original series and films, incredibly updates the character for the modern day.
I wouldn't say that. I just think all the characters, or all the actors, get their moment to shine, which is cool. I like that. I like having characters have plot relevance, doing things which make sense. The problem with Uhura is there's all that secondary plot with the romance and the relationship. It just doesn't go anywhere. Yeah, you want them to act. You want to get your bang for your buck hiring these guys, but have it connect better. That's all we want. That's what we want to see.
In the original series, I liked Uhura. She was a good character, but then in this one, she's just kind of a bit stuck up and very difficult to like.
Yeah, I guess.
Saldana commands attention and presence in all of her scenes here, showing that she isn't a woman in distress, but is actively smart, intelligent, witty, and skillful.
Was I not one of your top students?
Indeed you were.
And did I not, on multiple occasions, demonstrate an exceptional oral sensitivity and, I quote, an unparalleled ability to identify sonic anomalies in subspace transmission tests?
Consistently, yes.
And while some dislike the surprise relationship with Spock in the film, I think it works.
Yeah,
excellently
isn't
in
actually?
this
That's
movie.
what I just thought about now. She was his fucking student.
Yeah.
He had a relationship with. Oh my god.
Not the greatest professionalism from Spock there. Yeah, Spock's character was pretty much off. Spock and Kirk are the most different, I'd say. So, again, reimagining, you can do this. It's how it's done. Does it respect the character, etc.? That's up to interpretation.
That with that little asterisk there, allowing her a greater connection to other characters, as well as highlighting Spock's struggle in the film to acknowledge his own emotions.
That was such an awkward
kiss.
kiss.
That little story beat in a bit.
It's Spock. What are you going to do? It's always awkward when Spock gets emotional.
But it also brings depth to Uhura in this film as well, not just Spock, specifically because it is not the only thing her character is defined by. Unlike most women in Star Trek the original series, and film in general, Uhura is assertive, proactive, and smart. Like when she rejects Kirk's advances or figures out the Romulan message on her own. She is defined as more than
that was
Spock's
such a fucking stupid
something that
scene.
wouldn't be handled so well in future appearances by
his hands fucking
Sorry, going off on
inflating and
Into Darkness a
everything.
little.
Yeah, he's like that for like 10 minutes or so.
Oh god, it was so fucking bad.
He's running around. Yes.
A bit before we get there in another video. I'll try not to mention that film anymore here. But without forgiving the film for its lack of more engaging women characters who are mostly defined as main male character's mother, who aren't fridged, sexualized, or disappear 10 minutes in the movie, I will at least give this film that it's the most interesting Uhura has ever been in the series.
For a moment there, I thought you were just a dumb hick who only has sex with farm animals.
Okay, enough about women in Star Trek. What is this, Jessie Gender's channel? And don't worry, I'll have more to say on women in the Kelvin films in another video. But moving on, John Cho similarly brings a swashbuckling yet ambitious attitude to the character of Sulu in the few moments he's given to shine, and Anton Yelkin's Chekhov gives a funny yet still realistic science wonderkind portrayal. Simon Pegg's Scotty is, for me, perhaps the most radical departure from the original character, instead giving Scotty a more outwardly dismissive and manic energy than Jimmy Doohan's more laid-back and loose performance. Yet his portrayal here works for me as someone who, like all of our characters, is still in the midst of fully becoming the character we knew, eventually evolving into a more leadership presence we see in the next two Kelvin films. And while everyone today is rightly praising Anson Mount's recent take on the character,
I'm still confused, and I'm trying to think about why all the crew in the fucking on the Enterprise, they're all cadets in the beginning of the film, other than Spock and Pike. So why were they just filling up the flagship of the fucking Federation with cadets? Like the entire crew. You put Bones, he's a cadet a while ago, and all of a sudden he's just the head of medicine on Enterprise.
Didn't a whole bunch of ships get blown up? So they're kind of lacking personnel.
No, but that's only just happening. So the whole the ships don't get blown up until after they put a bunch of cadets on them. Apparently, they don't have enough captains. They don't have enough Starfleet officers to fill regular ships. So they just fill all the ships with cadets and then throw those cadets in starships and throw them at the enemy at Vulcan. It's weird and a bit nonsensical.
I'd have to rewatch the film to find out what's going on exactly, because that scene where they're addressing the roster, who goes where, and Uhura is having that argument with Spock. Like, there's all these people, like there's just dozens and dozens of people, and they're getting assigned.
They're all cadets.
Yeah, it's like this. They have this massive ships, like this list of ships.
Why are they assigning cadets at all? In fact,
it's a little what's the term? Edge of your seat sort of storytelling. They don't sort of slow down. They just sort of keep. Now we're all in lineup, and we don't know where we're going. Here's your assignment. You're like, oh, okay.
Here's a bunch of cadets in charge of the Enterprise. Don't think about it too much. They're now just in charge of entire departments.
Yeah, well.
Captain Pike here works brilliantly, lending weight and credibility to the idea of Starfleet as an institution, something worthy of respect and responsibility. He's a perfect parallel to the structure that Kirk so desperately lacks at the start of the film, as well as the father figure that character never had. He also delivers the best line in all of the Kelvin films.
Your father was captain of a starship for 12 minutes. He saved 800 lives, including your mother's and yours.
Well, maybe he should have had more oral sensitivity.
I also have to talk about Eric Bana's Nero.
That's not one of the
While
best
Nero's
lines
definitely
in
lacking
Star
depth on
Trek.
the
No,
page,
no,
Bana's
I'm
still
calling
crafting
bullshit
a
on that. That's
memorable
not one of
villain.
the best lines in Star
Nero's
Trek.
first scene, where he sits deadly still, not saying a word until he erupts in violence, gives Nero a haunting presence. And yet...
What is it with J.J. Abrams and just villains that are just uncontrolled?
That's like all of his characters.
They'll go on a bipolar rage and just murder you like fucking Kylo Ren, ruining all kind of like
villains don't need to go into emotional tirades and be angry man babies to be threatening. In fact, it doesn't really make them threatening. It makes them feel this emotionally unstable. Yeah, but it doesn't make them feel villainous or dangerous, really. I never got the dangerous feeling from Kylo Ren. He's like a whiny man baby. That's it. Yeah. So having a controlled villain is very, very dangerous. Very, very ominous and threatening. Like you had Thanos, who could beat up the Hulk hand to hand. You got Lex Luthor, who is just will smile in your face as you hold a gun to his head because he knows he has all these plans and coming down the stream. Yeah, you have the Joker who will laugh at you, but he laughs at you. He doesn't usually go into an emotional tirade of destruction unless you actually legitimately make him angry. And usually it's not actually that. It's him being in control and having all these plans put together. That's why I like Scott Snyder's take on the Joker doing Death of a Family. Like it was all in control. It was the Joker was very scary. It was almost like a supernatural being and how well he can put things together. That's why the Dark Knight's Joker was so scary. Yeah, he was crazy. He could do all kinds of violent things. He could erupt into violence, but he was not like emotionally unstable. He was always in control. He always had a plan, or seemingly a plan. He could control chaos. He was always there, ready to enact some sort of method of taking you down. It wasn't just, I'm going to sit here quietly until I'm erupting into anger. That might be good for maybe a side character, side villain, a lackey or something. Maybe good for one villain, but not every single villain you ever make.
Remember when, like, I don't know, what's a good Star Trek villain? Khan
was always in control.
Yeah. And something that makes, I think, a villain very menacing can be like how controlled they are, how decisive they are, and that can make them extremely dangerous because you can't manipulate them. You can't. There's no vices you can control because they're in so control of themselves. Kylo Ren, you could just say, "Hey, you stink," and he'll get upset, and you can say, "Oh well, I just pulled you in, I tripped you up, you fell into a hole, now I win."
All right, here's a wonderful super chat from Joe Crazy. Good literary question. I never really understood the problem people have with fridging. Isn't it just another way to create solid character motivation when done right? Now, we have to understand the concept of fridging, not to be confused with fridge brilliance or other techniques. But the idea of fridging is that I think it was based off a comic back in the day, and I think a website was based off that as well, that a female character, usually a love interest or what have you, was murdered and stuck in a fridge or stuck somewhere, which causes the male character, the male lead, to be motivated to go off and avenge her or do whatever. So why is that a bad thing? It depends on the recurrence of that trope or that pattern, if done well. So
I think it's considered bad because it happens to women. That's it's not a bad thing if it happens to a man. If you do it for a man, like if you have a female character who loses her husband, like in for example, what was it? Peppermint, where she loses her husband and daughter, and then that's a motivation for her to go train and get revenge. It doesn't happen. It's not bad when that happens, but when it happens to a woman, that's when it's called fridging. That's when it's demonized.
That's when it's sexism.
Exactly.
Yeah, so death by itself is actually a very common trope. It's what does the death mean? Who is it associated with? This is very important in murder mysteries. Happens a lot of times, actually, where you have a second body or you discover some clue, which motivates the detective to do something new. So this is pretty common, and there's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's just because, I guess, there's the feminist angle, women are dying, this is bad. It's like, no, death in stories is extremely common. So it doesn't really matter.
Well, obviously, Smud, the idea that there are so many women dying for the men in these films, purely nothing more than to be their motivation, means that is a sexist. You are saying that women don't have a place in film unless it's to be the motivation for the male character.
Which is interesting because a lot of people do feel when women die, it's a tragedy. Whereas if men die, it's like, okay, yeah, cause of war, or this or that, or some jealous other man fighting over a woman.
In the words of the Joker, it's all part of the plan when men die.
Yeah.
When women dies, everyone loses their minds. You kill one little old mayor, everyone loses their minds. But you kill a bunch of soldiers, and no one cares because it's just all part of the plan.
Yeah, so people tend to be women and children first, that sort of mentality. We tend to protect our women, and to see a beautiful creature, any sort really, anything we're attracted to, be dead is always shocking, and it causes that sort of that jolt into the story that hooks you in. Oh my goodness, a dead body or a blood trail or this or that. So how far do you get with the gore? How far do you get with the violence is up to you, but there's nothing inherently wrong with murder or death and telling a story to motivate a character in a story. It's
we heard it here from Smut. There's nothing wrong with murder.
Nothing wrong with murder, folks. There you go.
Banna's casual line delivery later on in the movie showcases Nero's working class background in a way that makes him relatable.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Captain Christopher Pike. To whom am I speaking?
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
Forcing you to empathize with his desire.
Didn't that remind you?
How quirky! What a fun, quirky bad guy.
Hey guys, it's Nero here, and today I'm going to be doing a YouTube tutorial on how to play planets.
That's what it felt like. Hi, I'm Nero today. I'm going to be talking to you about the latest Federation pop culture phenomenon. Don't really like it.
It was very reminiscent of episode 7. Oh, sorry, episode 8. So
it's not a good way to introduce your villain at all.
Hello.
Hey guys, I'm Nero.
Despite his horrific actions against Kirk's father, and even more so, the entire planet of Vulcan. We also have Jennifer Morrison making a small but memorable turn as Kirk's mother, and Ben Cross's wonderful constrained portrayal of Sarek. And before he became the God of Thunder, Chris Hemsworth made an amazing debut as Kirk's father. And the always stellar Winona Ryder as Spock's mother Amanda was excellent in the few scenes that she had. Oh, we had Tyler Perry for some reason, and he does great. And while this is definitely Kirk and Spock's film, unlike many past Trek films, every character gets an essential moment to shine in the story that reveals pieces of who they are. From Uhura solving the Romulan message, to Chekhov saving the Vulcan family yet still feeling sorry at failing to save Spock's mother, to Sulu's TOS referencing sword fight.
That was actually kind of stupid. I did not like that retractable sword. If you're gonna have a retractable sword, you're gonna have a phaser. So don't.
No, I think in the story they say that there's too much disturbance to use weapons, so we're gonna have to go hand to hand.
Oh yeah, that's right. There was an explanation for that. Oh yeah.
It's a stupid explanation, but it's still an explanation nonetheless.
For him to magically pull out his fencing saber, it's like, okay, I just happened to pack it.
Yeah, I just happen to have it all the time.
That's not as contrived. Fantastic.
As the film's science officer on Star Trek Discovery, Quinto ably captures a tortured Spock in this film.
This is the second time after... Actually, no, this is the first time after watching his performance in Heroes, that show back on TV, where he played that psychopath, superpowered villain. So to hear him, he got the role of Spock was like, what? Really? Like, I guess that could work.
He plays a psychopathic Spock as well.
A young man torn between his emotions and logic, even at the best of times, who is asked to be his best at the worst moment in his life and his civilization. And Leonard Nimoy, as always, is impeccable as Spock, showing a much more matured and confident character in his ability to handle his own inner emotions and turmoil, even in the face of the same tragic fate of Vulcan.
That entire scene was so contrived.
The original series ever struggling to deal with his emotions?
Yeah.
I remember a couple points where he has an extreme emotion and he has a small outburst, but he doesn't, he's not constantly conflicted all the time.
We'll have to point out another contrivance where they abandon Kirk on the planet there, and they just happen to find Spock in that exact area.
They're apparently at warp, but they are close enough to the planet where you can see it being destroyed. At the same time, it just so happens that they left them both on the exact same planet. They happened enough they happened to be close together. It happened enough that if Kirk wasn't almost attacked, almost killed by this creature, that he wouldn't have run into him. And it also just so happened that Scotty was on this planet, and yeah,
and it's all explained because via time travel, which it just drives me up the wall.
And Kirk, I don't know, Spock puts in some numbers into a thing, and that means that they can transport onto a fucking ship in warp that's warped far away from the solar system, the system that they're in right now.
This is where you get the JJ version of...
Yeah, they could just beam from one planet to another easily. Why would they need that spaceships if they can just transport to a planet like that?
It's one thing to reimagine the characters and put them to new lights. It's another thing to reimagine the technology and how it works. And I don't mind having new science fiction or new technology to explain stuff. It's like, how far do you go? Can you really do this? I mean, was this really the idea? And you can see the worst extent of that when you go to episode 7 and 9, what he does with technology there. Not saying episode 8 was a better version of that for Star Wars, but this is the kind of examples we see with JJ. It's like, this is what he does. He takes technology. Can I do more with it? Can I have like a giant war? A big gun? You know, all these ridiculous ideas.
He's J.J. Abrams' attitude towards everything is just, hey, I'll take that thing, but we'll do it bigger.
Bigger, exactly.
Why?
Why do you do this, sir? That's not a good sign of
planets, like, and things which much bigger, and like being able to see them through atmosphere when you really shouldn't, because this planet is probably a much bigger distance away from Vulcan, considering they're going through warp at the time when they drop off Kirk. And then you've also got J.J. Abrams in episode 7, where you see the lasers go through the fucking sky.
Yes.
Somehow.
The proper use of techniques in writing is, if you're borrowing someone else's ideas or you're in a different series that's not your own, is to use the elements in a very subtle, elevated way, not in a big, grandiose way. You don't do that with science fiction unless that's the major plot. That is the whole point of the story. Then it's assumed that's the idea. Like a Death Star is a big problem in the Star Wars universe. So with Star Trek, you don't want to do ridiculously crazy things unless they're done in a very, very intelligent way. Like the idea of DS9, there was an episode of a teleporting sniper rifle, which is crazy. I mean, that's just absolutely ridiculous when you think about having a murderer who could do that. Like he would be like miles away or whatever. And all of a sudden there's this teleporting bullet entering your brain.
The whole reason why they didn't use that rifle was because they had regenerative phases. But I think a teleporting sniper rifle would be a lot more, like, I don't know, a lot more useful than a regenerative phaser.
As an assassin, yeah, as a tool for an assassin. But stuff like that you can get away with, especially in Star Trek, because you can explain it and you have the motive behind it. I mean, there's a crazy person, a crazy Vulcan who's lost his mind and he's off killing people, which is counter theory to what we know of Vulcan or Vulcan people in general. So doing big crazy things in movies, I guess, is expected with J.J. Abrams because it's supposed to be that way as a popcorn munching blockbuster. So he thinks, oh, I got to do this now. And that's how we evaluate, at least that's how I evaluate the film, because it was designed that way, not because it's designed to be a good Star Trek film. So it just happens to be in the Star Trek universe, which is the same attitude I take to Lower Decks. And I evaluate it as a comedy, as a parody, or what have you. So.
In that Zachary Quinto Spock is facing. It's a wonderful goodbye to a role he helped define in his final on-camera appearance in a Star Trek movie. Yep, he never ever again appeared in a Star Trek movie for a silly cameo that adds nothing to the story. Sorry, going off on Into Darkness again. Focusing. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this film's story in just a bit, but I want to talk about
They go
how I
through a
adore the
black
concept of a
hole to do
travel
time
story,
travel.
creating an alternate universe from what we know of Star Trek canon. This does so many things simultaneously and fixes many problems. First, it helps fix that pesky issue.
Time travel does not fix problems; it causes more problems. Okay.
Huge problems.
Well, maybe she'll explain herself. Maybe
No, we know time travel causes problems. It doesn't fix problems.
Maybe, she will explain, and maybe it won't be a really stupid explanation. You don't know.
It's kind of like why it's so impressive that the whole whale movie, Star Trek with the whale movie, was so impressive. Did so well because it was all about time travel. But they did it so well that people didn't care. It didn't actually destroy the narrative. It helped it.
Issue of the Viacom-CBS split in the real world. If CBS wanted to create TV shows in the Trek universe, having this Kelvin timeline be its own thing allows both to coexist without any need for the two companies.
It's a reboot. What are you talking about? Just get on with it.
No, you could easily make films and TV shows that never have anything to do with each other. Example, Deep Space Nine and the TNG films are completely disconnected.
This is a silly argument. Because there's time travel in this movie, therefore both universes can exist. You're like, what? Why are you even mentioning this? This is silly.
To take the annoying extra time and work, together. Not that CBS did anything with Star Trek until the Kelvin movies were pretty much dead in the water, but they could have, and I guess that's the point. Second, it fixes that pesky canon problem that so many Trekkies seem to have. I mean, just look at the current
"but you're ruining canon"
discussions that come up with literally every single episode of Discovery and Picard.
All right, this is kind of I don't know who says this, but it's obviously another universe. We get it. Okay? We get it. It's not hard to figure out.
Discovery's not in another universe.
Well, no. I mean, like, these movies are different than what we learned from the original series. Obviously. This is patently obvious. We don't need an explanation like, well, there was dimensional shifts in this story, and that's why they have different dimensions now. It's like, this is not comic books, okay? We don't need an explanation.
She's kind of making excuses like, oh, well, now we can have an excuse that they're not breaking canon, because now we're in a different timeline. And it's like, oh, and people just keep complaining about how much they keep fucking up the canon in Star Trek Discovery. And it's like, yes. And you know what? They can't use that as an excuse with Star Trek Discovery because it's not in another timeline. It's actively set before the Kelvin and Prime timeline split off. So it's actively canon in all the Star Trek interpretations.
I mean, we could say the same thing of the Dark Universe, which was in the original series. It's like, yes, there are alternate dimensions in Star Trek. We can point out many things, many similarities. We don't need to connect the two. There's no reason to. Let Leonard Nimoy have his cameo. Who cares? We're not trying to argue this. This is a silly thing to say.
Within certain elements of the Trek fandom, often totally drowning out any criticism of the story of the shows on their own merits. Instead, trying to hold these stories to a 50-year-old franchise and storytelling. And don't get me wrong,
yes,
I love
because it's part of a 50-year-old franchise. I'm by no means
knocking it as a way to enjoy the franchise as a whole. I just dislike how it often precludes any other type of conversation, as well as some fans using this lens to completely judge a work within Star Trek as
it's also completely poorly written and extremely contrived and incredibly stupid.
I'm not going to go off on this idea here, as Renegade Cut already did an excellent breakdown of this with his Star Trek.
Did he seriously?
Excellent Renegade Cut. Excellent. Okay.
Are you serious? Did he actually? Oh my God. We have so many Renegade Cut videos to go through. This is not one of them.
I really don't think Generations is good.
No, it's not. It's really bad, guys. If you've ever seen it, it's just poorly done. God, what a horrible film. That was just a mess.
Even in like the behind the scenes production, it's a fucking mess.
The story, the settings, I think they like the acting. What was that guy's name? Malcolm McDowell. That's about the only thing I liked. The actor, not the role he played, not his lines, just that the fact they hired him. It's like, oh look, Malcolm McDowell, cool.
Yeah, they really wasted Malcolm McDowell there.
Oh, he's great.
He's a fantastic actor. I was like everything he's in, especially Clockwork Orange. Clockwork Orange was pretty good. He did a good job there.
when he was young, yeah.
Generations video, seriously go watch it. But I will steal one of his lines, because, you know, I'm shameful like that.
Canon is only important if you have decided it's important.
What?
No way that was the best line. That's a horrible line. Was it, what? That's horrible. Don't do
Canon
that.
is only important if you perceive it to be important. No, it is extremely important to continuity. Because if you actively have things which constantly contradict each other all the time, then it makes it incredibly difficult to understand that we're actually in a living, breathing universe. It breaks the whole facade. And if they can just pull anything out their ass that they want to do, it doesn't exist as a coherent world.
Why make Star Trek? Why just not make your own universe if you don't believe canon is important? Why make a new installment in an established franchise if you're not going to adhere to canon?
Mm-hmm. This is, even in the real world is very consistent in how things work because we are constrained within the laws of physics. We can't just all of a sudden develop the power of flight and then go fly. And just like how stupid that would be if all of a sudden Kirk just developed the power of flight and decided to fly, and it would make no sense because there is no explanation. It's they're breaking canon and everything that's been established.
Okay. So we can all agree lore is very important, and
yes.
Jessie's making a really stupid argument. The problem is she's making it in the context of time travel, and to argue that every possibility of the universe is available. So you have your old canon, you have your TNG canon, you have all these other shows. They all exist in all different dimensions or whatever bullshit. It's like, that's not the argument you're supposed to make. Either canon is relevant and all the universes exist and they're all happy together or separate, or it's not relevant and nothing matters and you can do whatever the hell you want. The end result's the same. They're still going to make movies. It's like, I don't care. It's not an argument. Stop talking about this dumb topic.
Even then, canon is, if you have something contradicting, that is an objective flaw. So if this thing doesn't line up with this thing, that's a problem. And it doesn't matter how you feel about that problem, it is still there as a problem. It doesn't matter if you care about it or not.
You may as well be saying these pages in this book, you can burn them. It's pathetic. It's stupid.
Canon is only top priority if you have decided it is top priority. Canon can just as easily be unimportant to someone else's subjective experience and judgment.
Oh my God, you're subjective. Therefore, everything can be whatever you want it to be.
Canon is not subjective. Canon is very, very objective. Extremely objective.
Why have writers? Why have craft? Why have sentences? Why have dialogue? Why have anything? It's all subjective.
I wish you could stay and listen to the rest of this nonsense, but unfortunately something came up. I have to go for a bit. But if I get it resolved and you're still going, I'll be back.
Alrighty, thank you, Devil. See you later.
I'm halfway through, so
that's a lot. Okay, we can always take a break, Shiny. It's not a big deal. All right,
let's keep going.
EC Cons, writing quality is only important if you decide that it's important. Renegade, yeah, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard from Renegade Cut, and we've watched a lot of stupid takes from him. I still it's like saying writers don't matter unless you think writers matter. Genre doesn't matter. Who cares? Tell a fantasy in your science fiction. Why not?
Star Trek fans who condemn an entry into its franchise for a lack of respect for canon always seem to cite the most meaningless minutia, and often cannot interpret said minutia outside of the lens of canon.
But anyways, doing this film as a retcon allows
I would love some
writers to do
examples
what they
there,
want
because
in it
usually
and
when
throw
you have
out
the
what they don't.
contradictions that
And
you
it's-
have in things like Discovery and Picard and all these other shows, they are fucking huge contradictions within canon. Like, extreme, mind-blowing contradictions. I don't think that a lot of the people say, oh, actually, in this show, it was blue, and then in this show, it's green. People are actively talking about much bigger problems.
Yeah, this is just, my brain is just like, I can't believe she cares about that opinion.
So, the Spore Drive is a fucking huge breaking in canon when it comes to Discovery. The ability to travel anywhere instantly. What does that remind you of? It reminds me of a fucking terrible episode of Voyager where they go to Warp 10 and they're everywhere instantly and can travel instantly anywhere. It is stupid.
That is the strangest.
Because of mycelial network, and they never use this for anything other than, oh, it could be used tactically in a war. And it's like, okay, why didn't they use it in any other time? That you could turn a 5-year voyage into 5 seconds. Why wouldn't you use this technology?
Right.
And the whole explanation is, well, we put the Discovery and classified all the files so no one knew about it. Everyone has to stay quiet.
So
that's incredible.
Continuity, canon, this is all important in any story, but it's even more so in fantasy and science fiction where you have to invent stuff like technology and magic and what have you. So it's extremely important to believability, the world you're in, world building, characterization, and just go down the list of how that how technology will interact with the lifestyle, the day-to-day of everyone, everything, how everything works, everything runs. So once you say to hell with that, then you have a problem. And there's so many writers in science fiction who mention you have to get your science right. You can't invent stuff. It has to be believable, because people who are reading this, who like science fiction, they are actually scientists. They're engineers. They like reading about chemistry and what it can do in the future, possibly, if we discover some new element or what have you. So very important. We all agree. This is driving me nuts right now. I can just stop the video right now and I'd be happy.
I think the amount of people who are actively really annoyed with how these shows are breaking canon shows you how much canon is actually important to the people who enjoy these shows.
Pretty much.
And it's not worth anything to say, actually, well, no, you shouldn't care about it, because it's all subjective. And then, okay, so if you're going with a whole subjective argument, then surely that means that you can't say that it's not important to them.
Right.
Just like they can't say, well, it should be important to you.
And we're not talking about having exposition on established canon, like how the warp drive works. We like that. We want more information. We want more details. The problem is, once a new writer comes into play and starts writing new information on how a warp drive works, he can't contradict what came before. So there's nothing wrong with exposing more data on new canon or updated canon. It just can't contradict what came before. And that's the problem with JJ. He doesn't care. He just wants something to go blow up or big or explosive or bright. And you should not do that for obvious reasons, as we all know.
And it still makes sense to all the canon nitpickers. There's still some things here and there, but overall it's a clever device. It also allows you to play with previously established canon.
No, there are still
continuity
mistakes. Just because you put it in a different timeline. There are things like, I believe it's Chekhov's age, that he's 17 when really, I think in the time that it's established, he's supposed to be older. There are videos by, I believe it's Major Grin, before like he got big with his videos with Discovery and all that, or at least it's someone made continuity videos about how the J.J. Abrams films already contradict established canon, which you can't explain with the timeline stuff. Because obviously Chekhov was born before the timeline split, so therefore his age should be the same in either one.
I believe the actor for Chekhov died a few years back in a car accident.
Yes,
Yeah.
just after or on set of Beyond,
Really?
I believe.
Wow.
My name is...
Sorry, again, Into Darkness. On topic. And finally, it allows this story to actually have stakes. I mean, real stakes happen in this film. With any prequel story...
Can't have stakes if your canon is changed. It's kind of like, I don't know where to put my brain. I don't know where
Well, I think she's talking about the timeline because you actively don't have any more films after this, which means they can do anything.
That's not really an argument. I mean, that's, again, we're talking about time travel and this and that continuity from a universe. It's a soft reboot. We get it. It's not hard to grasp.
Even if you have established that these characters are going to survive into the next film, there are ways you can make stakes in the film, because it's not you can make the stakes not just about the characters' lives, but so many other things. Because there are so many more things you can make the audience care about. It doesn't have to be that you're worried that these characters are going to die. You can have something that they care about, or has something that you can be interested in. There are many ways to make something appeal to audiences and draw them, immerse them into the scene, and make it very enjoyable.
That's one aspect of knowing that, yeah, there's probably going to be another one of these. They can't kill off all the major characters for whatever reason. It's probably unlikely. So when it does happen, like when we see in episode 9 of Star Wars, we're like, oh, that's unexpected. And then immediately after, it's like, oh, yeah, now they're back. So you see that in comic books. You see that in all sorts of silly, pulpy stories. But things don't have weight if the laws of physics and life are broken. Like continuity and believability.
You often know what's going to happen because, you know, it's a prequel. And often the story just becomes more of a checklist of things the audience has heard of and now gets to see.
Yeah,
Take a
that's
look at the
Solo. It's a
movie
bad
Solo,
film.
a Star Wars story. You have the
No one's
castle
gonna
run,
defend that
how he gets
film.
the Millennium Falcon, how he meets Chewie, all that stuff
Yes,
that you
terrible.
kind of knew had to happen does happen in the film.
And it's terrible. Again, you could have a prequel story which isn't like this, and it's not just a checklist. It's possible to do, and it has been done before. You don't have to just... why am I re-explaining myself? I've already explained this.
Solo.
But in Star Trek 2009, because of time travel, anything can happen. And
It's not because this is what?
Because of time travel, anything can happen. Ooh.
That's the dumbest. I didn't want to talk about this. This is so silly. Because time travel, therefore anything's possible. It's like, no.
I mean anything. They literally blow up Vulcan in this film. And I remember sitting in the theater with my jaw on the floor when that happened. If Vulcan can be destroyed, this movie can do anything it wants to, and that's so
but then they
insanely
don't do
cool.
anything else.
To tell us,
Yeah, this is essentially the plot of Star Wars. You know, we have a weapon that can destroy a planet. You're like, oh, well, we never seen that before, JJ. Whoa, oh, so original.
And that's the reason why people wanted JJ to do a Star Wars film, you fuckers. I'm looking at you, Angry Joe, Mr. Oh, well, JJ should do a Star Wars film. No, you were completely wrong.
Well, he should direct. He shouldn't write. That's the only problem. I think if he wants to make a glitzy and glamoury show, Star Wars would be a good department for him because he likes those sorts of over-the-top explosions or scenes. Just don't put him anywhere near the writer's chair or the writer's room.
Well, no, a general rule of thumb is don't include J.J. Abrams at all. Bad Robot is just a way of fucking your film.
Here's Easy Cons. I already know what's going to happen. I guess you never watch a movie a second time. No. I'm quite sure Jessie, or she definitely watched this film many times.
a prequel story that still feels like it matters and can surprise me.
But it's not a prequel story. It's actively not a prequel story. It's a reboot.
It is this is the whole argument she's made has been a waste of time. It's like Jenny. No one thinks this. I've never heard of anyone make this statement before. Time travel, therefore continuity is preserved. Okay.
Well, no, they still failed.
Movie is Michael Giacchino's haunting score. Giacchino, who at the time of this movie was my favorite TV composer for his work on Lost, somehow managed to still feel entirely in line with the lineage of Star Trek, with this score's
You know what?
bombastic
I'll give him
brass
credit.
flavor,
He's got
yet
some
still
nice
have it feel
scores.
entirely unique to the
There you
Kelvin
go.
timeline with its driving kinetic energy. I mean, every time I listen to the song "Enterprising Young Men," I feel simultaneously
I think we
inspired
should
by
pause before we get
nostalgia for the
copyright.
What's that?
Yeah. Because I think this is something that we could definitely get copyrighted on.
Don't worry, we'll be fine.
ethos of Star Trek, and so pumped up that I need to go to the gym to work out on this energy.
Pumped up. Okay, it's everything Star Trek is great, guys. Did you know? Everything. Everyone related to Star Trek is great.
It's got a nice soundtrack. Yeah. Okay.
Joe Crazy. Here we go again. Let's make Crooked Klingon because time travel makes... Yeah, this is the nonsense. It's like, this is not an argument. This is a silly
Do you
thing
know
to
what
say.
also has an amazing... Oh, I was going to say, do you know what also has an amazing soundtrack? Fucking the prequels. The prequels has some of the best music by John Williams. And it's weird because I didn't think that there were that many good tracks in the prequels, but then I actively listen to them on Spotify, and I think, oh my god, I keep forgetting about all this music that's absolutely fucking great, like the Republic March, or I can't remember what it was called, but it's pretty much the Separatist March as well. They've got some extremely good tunes in there because the prequels had so much more money for soundtrack and orchestra, and John Williams had developed so much in his ability that he managed to create something which was far more fantastic. But the problem is that people don't remember it because it's terrible films. So yeah, you can, the prequels have amazing soundtrack, but that doesn't save the film's writing at all.
Okay, so she likes the music. That's
to the gym. He also added in his own.
Okay, that made me laugh.
Well, if you want, like, it's not the way you want to look after yourself, by all means.
Yeah, I don't know which changing room you'd go into, but I mean, good luck.
So quite ably.
So it has good music, she's saying. This is the
Speaking
argument.
of which, the sound design is top-notch too, evoking numerous familiar Star Trek noises.
It looks and sounds good. It's not making something a masterpiece. That's just icing. That's just a nice thing to have.
Yeah, I'd say that things like visuals are more like the. Yeah, you're right with the icing analogy. I'm always trying to go with not the food analogies, but you keep bringing them back all the time.
Well,
which just makes me hungry.
They work. They're accurate. That's why I use them.
So anyway, I think the writing, as much as I'm a visuals person, the writing is always something which is extremely important. And whenever, like, I think me or you or LiteratureDevil ends up talking about a film, the thing we talk most about is the writing. But yet in this entire thing, Jessie Gender has barely even fucking talked about the writing in this film and some of the incredibly stupid things which happen, which we've even pointed out in this film.
It's hard to grasp why she likes it yet, aside from the production value, the fact that it has time travel, and it's just a Star Trek film. Anything Star Trek she likes. That's what I've learned from her so far, which is it's not a very unbiased view to take when you're talking about criticizing or analyzing anything. And this is the problem we have with fanboys. They're blinded so much by their fandom.
They're finding any reason just to like it. Anything. Oh, sound, music, visuals, theme.
No, not the themes. That's the argument that they make towards a story being good because the theme made me think and feel stuff. It's like, that's great. I'm glad you're thinking and feeling, but that doesn't make it a good experience.
While also knowing what to cut out. The moment where we lose almost all sound in the vastness of space truly puts you into the reality of the situation, grounding the film and putting you into the story in a way that other Trek films really haven't.
I really hate those shots like that where it's kind of like a shaky cam and just all this crap is happening. There's all these like millions of particles flying through space. It's like, I can't. What am I focusing on? What's the point of this scene? It's amazing. I mean, technically it's amazing, but it's just like, I can't. Like, what's happening?
The more over-the-top nature of what's going on. As for the cinematography, much has been made about the film's lens flares, namely that they're too distracting and too goddamn many of them, but I'll be honest, in this movie I actually kind of like them.
Of course you do. Of course you love them.
Even J.J. Abrams says that, yeah, the lens flares were a mistake. Because they're memes now. J.J. Abrams got memed for his use of fucking lens flares because there's so many of them.
Wow, the contrast of light and nothing is so amazing. Because of course they're good. Like, just come on, Jenny.
Someone who works just visuals, Jesse. Yes, a lens flare occasionally. You know what? It can definitely look nice when you throw effects on a camera. It's something which. You don't want to do too much of it. You have to get it just right. That you're not throwing too much at the lens, but you're also throwing up just enough that you're adding small flaws. Because when you're actually taking a picture, you're actively the camera itself will have lots of small flaws because it's never perfect. It's never perfectly focused. You get the glare, you get this, that, and the other, and you want those small flaws to really bring that visual to life. But when you're just filling it with lens flares, which lens flares itself are small imperfections within the camera because it turns up as a glare rather than an actual just lighter spot.
It's really a fourth wall breaking experience to have all these flares everywhere. Now, if it was like an actual window where there's a star outside and the window had its own sort of refraction or whatever effect that would be with the glass, then you'd be like, okay, cool. But it's still you're still under the impression that you are looking with a third person perspective with a camera, literally a piece of glass that is refracting light a certain way to cause a flare. And that's the thing I hate. I hate being like, oh, you are a piece of glass now, I guess. There's a piece of glass between you and the stage. Like, that's not even how it should even be perceived as. So certain lens flares make sense, but a lot of them, when they're used so many times, do not.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in this case where there's literally no window outside. There's no glass being reflected by any sort of light source. So very annoying. Oh, here's Joe Crazy again. Thank you, sir. I love not being able to see shit. Yeah, it's kind of contrast is just cranked up and whatever he does in some of those scenes. In this case, I can see stuff, but it's still kind of annoying.
It says, this world is damn bright and colorful, visually displaying the concept of the optimistic future.
No, that's not colorful. White is not a colorful color. It's just white. There's no color. It's I guess it's all the color, but it's not red, it's not blue, it's not anything else. It's just white.
It just means your bridge is well lit, as opposed to Discovery, I guess, which is just the bridge is just big.
Well, I wouldn't say it's well lit. It's too lit. It's
like spotlights, yeah, like spotlights in certain areas, and everything else is dark.
I just imagine, like, oh, holy shit! I can't fucking, I can't see what's on my console. There's a lens flare on my console.
Yeah, look at that. The console. This is
Sir, fire the weapon. I can't see it.
Can you imagine working with like the, I don't know, maybe working on an animation and the window behind you is like reflecting the evening sun. It's like, this is going to drive me nuts. I can't see a thing.
Gene Roddenberry was always going on about. Visual storytelling, things that films are supposed to do. It also lends the movie a unique
That's
look
not
that is
visual
immediately
storytelling. What the
identifiable
fuck? Lens flares aren't visual storytelling.
That's crap in front of the lens. That doesn't make sense. It's as if a moth sort of sat on the lens and it was out of focus. It was all this big blurry blob. You're like, oh, look, it's visual storytelling. Oh, it's flying away. It must be a moth. It's like, what? Why is there a moth flying around?
Star Trek, which every single blockbuster that has that same desaturated blah look makes this certainly stand out. Yes, lens flares have become overly distracting.
What was that? Was that Power Rangers? What the hell was that?
I think so, but why were we showing Power Rangers?
Why did they show that? What? Let me rewind that.
Which every single blockbuster that has that same desaturated blah look makes this certainly stand out.
Is that desaturated blah? Is it?
I guess it's desaturated. Because the red looks very like dark and so does the yellow and blue. But why are we looking at fucking Power Rangers?
I guess other films do this too.
Not to mention that you're actively looking at like a shot which is very shoddy and hard to see because they're actively doing something. You could have had, I don't know, a shot that you're using which is more than a couple seconds, or at least staying still, so you can see what's going on.
This is not fine. Yeah, other films do this. We get it. That doesn't mean it's a good thing. Okay.
Yes, lens flares have become overly distracting in other parts of Star Trek, namely another film that might have come after this, but we're not going to talk about that. But here in this film, the lens flares work.
No, they don't. Lens flares do not work in virtually every scenario, and there's way too many in J.J. Abrams' films.
Again, it's just something you put in, like, very subtly. It's like salt. I guess I'm trying to do food analogies now. It's something you add a little bit of. You don't flood it. You add a little bit.
Yeah, it's like salt on dessert. Like, you don't put a big hunk of salt on dessert. That's too much salt. You need a touch. Just a touch of salt. Here's Adam Wooford. The Expanse did it better with dealing with space and had better camera effects and how scenes are shots and has more science than J.J. Abrams. Yes, the Expanse is a fantastic science fiction show, and they do very realistic hard science at many times throughout during combat, explaining how things work. So lens flares, there are plenty of them, but there's not so many shots of space where it's like this constant barrage of light.
I think one of the things that The Expanse does so well is world building. It has some absolutely fucking fantastic world building.
It does many things very well. Pacing is sometimes one of them. So it, I haven't seen season 4 yet. I'm going to watch that soon, actually. But I love it.
Wait, season 4 out?
It was on Amazon. They got bought out.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I think I have seen that season.
Really? Oh, okay, cool.
And also, this movie is peppered with so many amazing and memorable shots, working seamlessly with the CGI. I mean, come on, this movie looks damn amazing all the way through, and it was made over a decade ago at this point.
Randomly flying
There's
out of fucking Jupiter to surprise the ship is weird and stupid.
And also, people complain about how the camera's constant movement here is annoying, but as usual, I think that's really a complaint against how that camera style has evolved throughout Star Trek the past few years, and not necessarily a grievance against this movie.
No, but J.J. Abrams has some very terrible camera work sometimes. I think there's
it makes you feel involved,
in some film, I remember that we were covering it in one of the other Smudcasts, and it was like they're just doing like some exposition, and the camera's just going round in a circle constantly, and it's trying to make you feel like it's more exciting, but it really isn't, and it's really just hurting on everything.
That was his movie. It was very similar to Stranger Things, I think, or Super 8, or whatever it was called. And
yeah, I think it was Super 8, where the camera's just spinning around.
Yeah, the dialogue is so dynamic. It looks amazing. It's like, yes, it's just they're having a normal conversation.
J.J. Abrams thinks spinning is a good trick when it comes to the camera. It's when you're just having a conversation, spinning is nauseating, especially when you're doing it fast.
Yeah, it's like one big shot of just all these things happening. Back and forth, back and forth.
Which is just distracting and honestly kind of mildly nauseating. I also really love this movie's production design. I love seeing the bowels of the Enterprise. You're literally looking at larger-than-life cacophony.
Does this look like it's the bowel of the fucking Enterprise?
I know, it's just you see this a lot in science fiction, especially the B movies back in the day. They're running through a factory or some sort of industrial plant, and it's like this is the engine room. Okay, sure.
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's the engine room. No.
Feel more realistic and evokes that submarine feel that Star Trek picked up with, beginning with the Wrath of Khan. Also, it's actually a Budweiser factory.
Don't want a submarine feel.
Can't beat the Beer of Kings. And the updated uniforms look absolutely gorgeous, though perhaps not as nice as Discovery updates on the TOS uniforms, but they're still pretty beautiful. The only thing I don't overly love...
Everything's everything. It's everything, guys. It's a masterpiece because everything is good. Did you get that?
Is the Apple Store Bridge, especially now that I've seen Discovery's loving update of the Enterprise Bridge, which still feels modern and yet lovingly evokes the original series. I can at least give that this Apple Store Bridge...
I would take Discovery's bridge over this bridge any day.
I don't know, I didn't like the primary colors. The red console.
Yeah, I would take it over the fucking J.J. Abrams bridge, because at least the Discovery Bridge is much more evocative of how it should look. Rather than just saying, hey, look, let's have a complete redesign, just throwing everything out the window.
Are we still on the section with lens flares? Is this what we're talking about still? Now she just jumped into other things that are visually attractive?
I don't know.
Yeah, I lost track.
TOS Enterprise, but given that the rest of this movie's style is trying to evoke the original series over the movies, it's not bad as a bridge, it's just less unique. I also really love all the non-Starfleet sets. Vulcan's child pods are so unique
it's
and yet feel distinctly Vulcan.
It's just orbs in the floor.
Hey, look, there's the Vasquez Rock. Say hi to Raffi for me. Though I wonder why this was the most logical architectural design. Starfleet Academy feels inspirational and larger than life, and Nero's ship, both inside and out, is a web of dangerous spikes, ledges, and falls.
And that is incredibly stupid and nothing.
The jellyfish ship is such a unique ship design as well.
Don't look
There's just
like
so much distinctive design in this movie that it's insane.
Yes, things are designed in detail in CGI. We get it. That's amazing.
They're not... especially the Romulan ship, it makes no sense in how it is designed. It's a big open ship with random spiky platforms everywhere. And that is a terrible design for a ship.
It's also gigantic.
Mm-hmm.
Any blockbuster nowadays would be lucky to even get half of the interesting scenes in this film. And I'm just picking a few because there are so
Scenes are interesting. Okay, let's see what's interesting about them.
So many of them, and I'll talk about a few others later on in this video as well in a different section. The film's pre-credit sequence is easily one of the most impactful openings in any blockbuster film.
God, the lens flare. There's so many. There's like a flare across the horizon. You got this thing on the bottom.
There's two.
There's one
of them's...
So many lens flares. They work.
I think
they all
you
work.
can hardly see. There's one on the floor. There's one on the window, and the one on the window is fucking huge.
What the hell is going on with... You think that you'd have like protective glass from like the sun to reduce light in space? But no, it's fine. Just get all these blurry effects in your eyeballs every time you turn your head.
Just adding post. That's all they're doing.
You give people headaches watching this thing. Your job, you're like having a headache, and in 30 minutes there's all this light in your eyes.
Besides maybe Inglourious Bastards. It does so many things at once. Not only does it thrust us into the action, it introduces us to the new feel and look of Starfleet. It also offers up some intriguing questions, some fun misdirections like thinking that this may be the Kirk that we all know. It establishes how terrifying Nero is, and it also shows us and creates the moment that defines James T. Kirk's life even before he's born. The death and heroic sacrifice of his father to save the Kelvin crew.
Does that
this
really
scene
define
is so
his
powerful
life?
And efficient, and I love it.
Is it powerful and
time.
efficient?
Moving on, the bar scene between Kirk and Pike is perhaps the best scene in the entire Kelvin franchise. It establishes Starfleet as a guiding force for Kirk, and basically defines Kirk's whole motivation for the entire movie, and even into the entire Kelvin franchise. To challenge yourself to do better, to trust yourself, even if that's the hard thing to do, and to hold himself accountable to the things that his father did before him. The space orbital jump is an insanely effective action sequence, one so good that Star Trek did it 3 more times. The Kobayashi Maru scene, one of those checklist prequel scenes, and a classic moment in Trek history that we finally get to see, is actually used to great effect here because it also helps define Kirk's issues in this film, his arrogance and not really caring for the things going on around him, and a perfect place for our two star-crossed
the thing is that's also a contradiction with how it's defined in Wrath of Khan.
So I've been ranting and raving about how much I love the different things in this movie, but I'd be remiss to say if this film was perfect because no film ever is. So here are some things that I really dislike.
It's a masterpiece, though. So that means the things
implying it's perfect.
Yeah, but the things that aren't perfect are so insignificant that, like, if you have a list of things, that's not insignificant. Okay, what's insignificant is a writer not using a comma splice or not using an Oxford comma. That would be insignificant. Then you'd have an almost perfect series of grammar. That would be like still an A+ paper or an A+ story. But no, there's a list of them. It's like, okay. Still a masterpiece, apparently. Here's Adam Whifford. Thank you, sir. You guys remember when Windows are structurally weak spots and do not make space travel extremely dangerous? That's why you don't have them? Yeah, but in Star Trek land where J.J. Abrams exists, it's just a great reason to have lens flares. You need to have lens flares, guys. You need lots and lots and lots of windows. Just everywhere window. And sometimes when you don't even have windows, you still put in lens flares.
You'd have lights. Just random lights that are so bright that they just cause lens flares.
They're reflecting off glass, and there's got to be glass and light.
Reflecting off glass. It's just they'll have a light in the ceiling. There's light fixtures that are emitting these lens flares everywhere.
Maybe he put a literal bubble over the lens, like a piece of glass, just to give the physical effect. And he's like, it's not enough lens flares. We got put some more lens flares in there. Okay. All in post-production. The post-production lens flare team. That's what they call it.
In Star Trek 9. Since I've already ranted about the treatment of all women besides Uhura, first up for me is perhaps the biggest thing I dislike about this new movie so far, no pun intended, its escalations of scale. Now I've talked about this in a different video, but everything in this movie has to be physically bigger and more powerful. I mean, the Kelvin USS Enterprise is like 1,000 times bigger than the one in the original series. Now, I don't hate things being physically bigger because of canon, but because it starts to make actual no sense and pulls me out of the movie.
Yes.
Nero's ship makes no sense being as strong as it is for a mining ship, though that is consistent with the fact that the Remans in Star Trek Nemesis, a Romulan slave race, were able to make basically the most badass ship in all of Star Trek.
Tactical analysis, Mr. Wolf.
52 disruptor banks, 27 photon torpedo bays, primary and secondary shields.
She's a predator.
But why is Nero's ship so dang armed and strong? And yes, I know it was explained as Borg tech in a comic book, but that's just really just trying to justify the choice after the fact.
Yeah.
Starfleet also sends almost the entire Starfleet to Vulcan, and it just gets decimated, which leaves me wondering, is Starfleet totally done now? Their fleet is really hurt here, and it's just like an afternoon. But nah, it's fine. And that's not to even mention the—
No, it's not. They're all dead. They're all gone.
Galaxy-threatening supernova going off that destroys Romulus, which makes no sense. Like, how would a supernova destroy, like, all of the galaxy? Why not have it just be Romulan's sun? In fact, that's what Star Trek Picard tried to retroactively say, because that makes way more sense that it was just a singular solar system and not, you know, a galaxy-destroying supernova. Speaking of which, I don't love the weird plot conveniences throughout the film. Like Spock just decided—
All right, so we already have some major problems without even talking about the plot, just actual events in the film, which would already not make it a masterpiece by any metric, okay? A masterpiece is something that has no flaws, or the imperfections are so minute, they do not impact anything, like a coffee cup or something like that. That's like, oh, someone left a cup in a contemporary setting where a coffee cup shouldn't be, for example. It'd be like, oh, why is there all this junk in the way? Like, that's silly. But now we're going to get to the plot and contrivances with the plot. We already listed a few already, so there's a lot.
To kick Kirk off the ship instead of just putting him in the brig, just so Kirk can conveniently meet older Spock, who happens to be hanging out in the exact closest cave to where Kirk happened to land. Oh, and also Scotty's there for some reason too. I mean, I can buy some coincidence in film, but stuff like that is really, really stretching it. I also really hate the convenient space magic in this film. I mean, what is rad matters besides a random thing that can do what we say it does because of the plot?
This is J.J. Abrams. This is why he's not much of a writer. So she's admitting this is a horrible thing. It's like, yes, it is a very bad thing. As soon as you have plot elements or plot devices that just come out of nowhere and change everything, like this thing that can blow up a planet, it's kind of a big deal. And this is their whole MO of destroying planets. And no one's gotten on this except the Federation, and they get completely destroyed. And we see that off camera. We don't see the actual weaponry of this massive ship which can defend itself against an entire fleet of the Federation.
And why can you do that? Borg.
It's big and powerful. It just can. So what's the point?
This is hardly a problem that began in this film with Star Trek, but it's certainly obvious here. Also, we get these really inconsequential action sequences that have nothing to do with the plot, like this Cloverfield monster or Scotty getting Willy Wonka'd. They're fun and effectively done for what they are, but they don't really add much to the story. Now, these are all problems that don't really destroy the movie for me in any way, but they
Of course they don't. They're just sort of little small blemishes, because everything is perfect in Star Trek land.
Are all worth mentioning as issues here, especially because they're all problems that get exponentially worse throughout modern Star Trek, and I've talked about that in a different video. Though perhaps the worst thing that this film did that I haven't mentioned yet, and something that really angers me more than anything else that this film did, is that they killed Archer's dog, Porthos. How dare you, J.J. Abrams, I will never forgive you.
I tested it on Admiral Archer's prize beagle.
Well, I know that dog. What happened to it?
I'll tell you when it reappears.
He's eating all the cheese he wants in heaven now.
Friend who would never hesitate to offer his paw in exchange for a simple smile or a slice of cheese.
Now here comes the section of this video I'm going to call Star Trek Potpourri. I could probably have come up with a better—
So that was just a list of all the huge problems that don't really bother her. They're just there.
Huge, but it's like, that's fine.
It's like, my wife is a complete hideous giant blob, but that's just part of her character. I love her. Like, can you be a bit more objective, please?
I think the 6 minutes hopefully don't mean anything, so we can skip them. But we'll see what it is.
Yeah.
Maybe she'll redeem herself
Yeah.
in the last 6 minutes. We don't know.
Our name for it, but you know what? I'm tired. Fight me. But this is the section where I'm going to mention all the really cool details and references in this movie that I couldn't find a way to crowbar into this video elsewhere.
Okay, do
So
we
let's see how
do we
fast
bother
I
with
can
this?
name all of
No. I'll just skim through it.
things like
References.
Uhura
Yeah,
is
they
just-
mentioned Cardassian sunrise as a drink. They have a tribble in the background. They have some other things.
Yeah,
Reference
this is pretty much a fanboy gushing about a thing which is perfect. Well, no, sorry, nothing is perfect, but even the imperfections are fine. Which is just nauseating. If you're going to say something's wrong, that's a flaw. And the more flaws you have, and there are a heck of a lot of them, the less of a perfect score this should get. This is not a masterpiece. You can call it a flawed masterpiece, but a heavily flawed masterpiece would be the best way to describe this thing if you are so inclined to say this is great Star Trek. Zorant00, sir. Thank you, sir. I'm surprised you are covering this person. They are very much a fanboy girl that loves anything with the correct label on it, no matter how terrible. We have discovered that in the past 2 videos we did. So, yeah. And again, we take whatever you guys recommend. We vote on it, and this is the next one that came up. But yeah, no, it's pretty much Star Trek is near perfect, and the imperfections make it even better or worthwhile. So we can stop right now. We know what we're going to give it. She's going to give it. So
is there anything else? Just reference number 26. I think that it's probably fine. I don't think there's anything else.
Yeah, I think we're good. So yeah, there's another Jessie Gender. And
what would you give this video?
The video?
I would give it 1 missing Porthos out of nothing.
I wouldn't even rate it. I would just forget about it. Oh my god! See, fanboys are kind of the thing we take apart on our Smudcast, but it's just enthusiasm. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Not much.
I actually forget a lot of the videos we cover on this channel. We cover them, I forget about it. Someone then reminds me of it, like somewhere down the line. It's like, wait, did we cover that video? Oh, I guess we did.
Well, yeah, this is our second one of hers, so we know exactly what kind of person she is, or at least her fandom is, and that's fine. But if you guys want us to do another one, I think we actually have another one on the docket. But what was it gushing about? Probably another Star Trek thing. I can't recall. But that's how it goes with a lot of people on YouTube. They're completely biased. They have their fandom or their opinion, and they never let it go. Nothing can harm it. Nothing can change it. It's amazing. It's perfect. And, well, they're popular for a reason. Anyway, I think that's enough for today. It's too bad we couldn't get LiteratureDevil back, but that's okay. But thanks for tuning in, Shiny. I do appreciate your commentary. You obviously know a little bit more about the topic than I do. As much as I do enjoy Star Trek, it's been so long since I've seen an actual Star Trek episode. I love them.
I'm just here to be the fanboy, aren't I?
Oh, yeah, you're the fanboy. Well, I'm having a busy weekend on Saturday as well as Friday, so hopefully we can have another Smudcast tomorrow if everyone wants to. But guys, keep giving us your suggestions. We do have a full docket. I mean, in terms of how Discord saves 2,000 characters, we always hit 2,000. I have to cut down spaces in other.
Yeah, we could probably cut down ones which have been there for a while and people don't really want to cover.
This is true. Yes, but yeah, I might get some new guys on board just because I want to give Shiny a break and get him back to work and do what he loves. And plus, LiteratureDevil's always busy. Evan's always busy.
You think I'm not working on these streams?
I know you're always working on a video, so yeah, you got stuff to do. And I know it's past your bedtime. I don't know how you live past your bedtime.
Well, it's only 1 o'clock in the morning.
Only. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. Do send us your suggestions as always, and we'll talk to you real soon. Have a great evening.